What's up, Candy Ken? What's up, Baby J? How's it going?
Not today.
Candy Ken and Baby J.
It's Candy Ken.
Welcome to the Candy Ken Show.
Here we go.
Let's go.
Man, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, brother. I appreciate it.
Of course.
I gotta ask you, do you know if Arnold Schwarzenegger, is he from Austria or Germany?
Austria.
So then you guys have some things in common.
Yeah.
You know, you're both bodybuilders and you moved to LA.
Exactly.
That's
Not
great.
only that, when I watched the TV show, it really hit home. Because that's like how I felt. Like he always felt like he doesn't belong to like his home, like where he's from. And I always felt like that. And when I came to the States, I was like, wow, I feel home.
Wow. Yeah, see, a friend just told me about that show. I haven't watched it yet, but I look forward to it.
Yeah, man, it's incredible. And not only that, because it's also a little bit sad. And in his character, even though he did so many great things, he like lost his family on the way. So it really makes you like appreciate sometimes the little things, because he has accomplished so many world titles, but then the one thing was like his family, and he still says like that's everything. So
Yeah, I believe that. Well, I saw what you're doing and your brand and everything, and then I saw you have a family too, and I thought that's so cool because there's so many people today who they have a big brand and they're out and they have tons of girls or whatever, but they don't realize the value of family. I'm not married at the moment, but I'd love to be when the time is right. And it's just cool that you're building a family, you have a wife, you have children. Like, I think that's beautiful, man. So
I think that's kind of missing, especially I don't know, on the creator side, we don't really show the value of family anymore. And when I ask young people, they don't even want to have children anymore. And it makes me like really sad. Like everybody wants like a Lambo and like the stupid shit.
Yeah.
And nobody wants like, I want to be a dad. Or you never hear like somebody say like, I want to be a father. I want to like have like 5 kids. Everybody's like, oh my God, if I can afford one, blah, blah, blah. So once you have a child, you realize this is like what I was meant to do, kind of.
So
you know?
cool. I've even thought like I'd love to have 10 kids. Honestly, that might be a lot, but you know, like just
Definitely.
having a big farm and
Yeah.
like kids running everywhere. Yeah, I'm totally with you. I think it'd be cool.
Children is everything. And also it changes your whole life, your personality, your perspective, how you, the connection to your wife, or to, like it completely changes, because before you're like dating and then she's like the mother of your child now. And it's an intense connection.
That's really cool.
It will
Yeah.
never go, and it makes you like you're ready to take a different level of adversity, where before maybe you would just break up. Now it's like no, like we'll make this work. Like we'll work it out, and even if you go through tough times, you'll make it work.
Yeah.
Because now you're like a family. And it also is not only about yourself anymore. I think people nowadays are really like narcissistic, very like ego driven. The whole like mental health thing is always about me. Listen to my problems. Once you're a dad, you know, it doesn't matter how you feel. Your emotions sometimes don't matter. It matters that you're there for your family, that you provide, that you protect. Doesn't matter if I have a bad day or a good day. You know, like as a dad, I have to keep the family intact, and I need to be strong for my family. And that responsibility is really healthy and really good, because it gives you purpose. And before you have career and IG and TikTok, it's not very much of a purpose. And only because I'm a dad, I started this podcast, because I cannot only make funny comedy videos on TikTok. I need to like show a different side, and like I need to educate and like inspire people, motivate people. Like I need to show something else. Like I can't just like do stupid comedy clips.
I love this, bro.
Yeah.
It's really cool to hear you say all of this. I really do.
And then the thing that got me to you is the children. Now you think about food. You think about, do I want my kid to go to school? Do I want my kid to be brainwashed by the system? Do I want him to like grow up as a worker and do a 9 to 5, or do I want to educate him? Am I gonna put sunscreen on my son? Am I gonna let him be in the sun? You know? And then I go to a doctor, and this doctor tells me to not go in the sun. And I'm like, what do you mean? And like I have this like old frail dude in front of me, right? Looking pretty unhealthy to me, looks pretty sad. He has like 7 minutes. I can see him, his urge to go to the door and leave. And I have like all these questions about testosterone, about health. Like I want to do a full blood panel. I want to like know, like I don't have any issues, but I want to know what I'm capable of, and like I want to know what I can do to optimize my body. And this guy tells me to not go in the sun and to always cover from the sun. And I'm so confused because it like intentional. I feel like I love the sun. I've always loved the sun. This is why I moved to LA. You know, in Austria it always rains. I love the sun. I always loved it. And I'm not talking about like sitting on a beach and tanning for 3 hours straight. I'm talking about like I walk around with no shirt at all times. I try to suck up as much as I can in between car rides or bringing my son to school or whatever it is. And I try to expose myself early in the morning to fresh sunlight because it makes me feel good.
Yeah.
And if I don't get sun, I don't feel good. And I was in Berlin, I studied photography. I didn't get sun for 3 months, and I felt like depressed.
Yeah.
I felt like darkness, and I feel sad and lonely. And there's a reason why people have to go into like these rooms and suck up like UV or whatever. And I think that like brings me to you because I think the sun is so important, and I think you're so deep into that topic.
Yeah, well, it is really important, bro. You're 100% right. Like when we're in places where there's no sun, for example, hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago, we would have still gone outside. Like even the Vikings, the Vikings were still outside under the light. So there's still light, even on a gray, dark day. There's still some light coming through, even if it's not like the hot sun. And that's in the winter, it can be enough. But the problem is when it's winter in, for example, Berlin, or I grew up in Philadelphia, people just stay inside. We just don't go out because it's cold. And so, yeah, people end up really depressed and pretty sad. There's a study that there's a great book. There's many books I'll share, but one book called The Healing Sun. And people can write these down, or we can put it in the notes. But we'll have AI. It'll put it in the notes, I'm sure. Anyway, so the study, one of the studies in this book was like 31 or 32 people have seasonal affective disorder, so like seasonal depression. And they just went out for an hour walk, like 1 hour, even when it was gray and cloudy, but still there's some light. And it was like 30 out of 31 people had a significant improvement in their seasonal affective disorder, like to where it was almost gone, just by going for an hour walk. So it's almost like that easy. You can move to LA, obviously. That's great too. But it's that simple.
I know every time somebody tells me like they have a headache, I'm like, did you get enough sleep? Did you go outside in the sun? Did you exercise? Or did you at least walk, right? Or are you just on your screen with like your crooked body eating like fucking trash?
Yeah.
Like, and then you're like, I have a headache or I'm depressed. I'm like, duh. Like, of course you are, right?
Yeah, bro. Really cool. Really cool.
Yeah, like, and also there is a big, on the opposite, you have all this blue light, which as a photographer, I love blue light to shoot because it gives me a very neutral, you don't want the sun because it's so yellow, right? It messes up your photography.
Yeah.
Or even in this room, if the lights are too yellow, it's just not going to be a good image. But naturally, the blue light is very bad for you. So maybe you can tell me about blue light.
Yeah, of course. That's a great place to start. So we have this system in our body called the circadian rhythm. So for regular people, they might just know the body clock, right? And it's getting really popular. You've probably heard of Andrew Huberman, the Stanford doctor. He's now huge on Instagram, social media. But anyway, so he's bringing awareness. But the research has been done over the last many decades, and they've been breaking down the details of it. But basically, they found, the scientists, that we have these cells in our eye that don't make images in our brain like the rods and the cones, but these other cells, they literally go straight to the hypothalamus, which is the master regulator gland in our brain that basically tells which hormones we should secrete and so on. And there's this part of that part of our brain that's called the suprachiasmatic nucleus. Anyway, that's like the master clock they found. And it turns out that those receptors in our eye that they found, they're sensitive to blue light. So they know, both from the mechanisms and from actually testing this on animals and humans, we can see that blue light actually wakes us up. It makes the cortisol and all these things. So blue light from the sun is actually really good for us. Blue light from the sun is what gets our rhythm going in the morning. It wakes us up, like you said, you get the morning sunlight, you feel good. And there's a lot of blue. So blue light's not actually bad, but the sun always has around 40% near infrared, and that's the part that we feel as heat when we're standing in the sun. And this near infrared is really good for our cells, for our mitochondria, for our metabolism. So for example, you've probably seen red light therapy panels, like they're really popular now. So they just give us a lot of near infrared and red, which our lights don't have. Like these lights we have on us don't have any near infrared and very little red light. So that's from the sun really important for our health. And our modern lights, the LEDs and this and that, they have tons of blue, but not enough near infrared. So the real problem with blue light, there's two. One is when we have lots of blue without the near infrared. So that's like phones, computers, televisions, modern LED lights. And then the other problem is when we have blue at night, because at night in nature, we would not have any sun. Obviously, we might have fire, but fire doesn't have blue light, so it doesn't disrupt our body's clock. But if we have a phone and we're staring into our phone right before bed, it's literally telling the brain, hey, the sun just came up, wake up. Don't make melatonin, which is what you need to have deep sleep and repair. Make more cortisol, which then you're more stressed, you're more awake. Fine in the morning, but not good in the evening. So really it's that simple. So blue light can, during the day, it can cause damage. When we don't have this balance, it can actually damage our eyes, which is why I would use these yellow lenses that we make. We call them daylight lenses during the day to protect the eyes. And I actually want to give you one. So especially because you're sitting here and you have these lights. And so here,
I like this logo
might
too.
Be the Thank you.
It's
Yeah,
like Egyptian.
Yeah, it's Egyptian Eye of Horus. So
Yes.
I didn't know this. It was actually pretty shocking when I learned this, but I picked the company name Ra Optics, like the sun god Ra. Yeah, that's good. That's a good style for you.
Right.
I thought
Those
would be for you. So Ra is like the Egyptian god of sunlight, and I thought, okay, well, we're making these blue light protection glasses, so it's about getting people into natural light. So Ra kind of made sense. And then I thought, what would be a cool logo? Well, I remembered the symbol. I thought it's really cool, and a lot of people get this tattoo and so on. But anyway, then a couple years later, I learned that anyone can Google this, if you take like a brain, that's of a dead person, and they cut it in half, where the pineal gland is, then the pineal gland is actually the gland that releases melatonin in our brain. That's actually exactly what it looks like, that area of the brain. So the Egyptians, it seems like they made this symbol when they would dissect pull the brain out and look at it. They actually knew like that area was important. And this is a whole more like spiritual conversation, but lots of people, they talk about the third eye, like the third eye. And that's
even Joe Rogan has that on his logo.
Oh, really? I didn't know that actually. Yeah.
It's everywhere. Once you start looking into that, it's everywhere.
Yeah. So there you go. So I'm really glad I picked it. And so that's our logo. But it all connects because blue light is good for us in the morning. That's what people need to know. And we should all go in the sun for 10 or 15 minutes. And 5-6 years ago, I was one of the only people talking about this, in addition to a couple of mentors of mine. And now you have Huberman. So if people don't even believe me, fine, go look at Huberman. And he's the guy at Stanford who's talking about all the blue light and get the sun for 10 to 15 minutes in the morning. And then if you can in the evening at sunset, like watch sunrise, sunset, simple, right? And then and then try to get outside throughout the day if you have to work at an office, which isn't ideal, right? But go outside. And then what I do is I try to work outside when I can, like on my laptop, I take it out. So I spend way more time on a computer for my business than is optimal, let's say, just because I'm running a company. But I do the things I can, like I'll wear my glasses if I'm inside. I'll go sit under the umbrella outside or even in the sun if I didn't get too much. And these are things anybody can do.
What about that when you put that night shift on your iPhone?
Yeah.
Does that help at all? Or
it actually does. So for the people watching on the camera, there's actually a setting that we can link to, but you can actually set it where you can do a triple click and actually make it red. So I combine the iPhone. The best way to block blue light on an iPhone is to combine this night shift mode and then add this. It's a shortcut I set. It's in the color filters anyway. So it's really good. And then when I'm using my phone at night, I use that and I use my glasses. So it's like the minimum stimulation.
Yeah. So the worst you can do is look at the blue light before sleep or scroll on your phone on TikTok because your brain is going to be like, it's daytime.
Yeah, I would say like if you want to watch Candy Can, watch Candy Can in the morning or in the middle or anytime like before like 7 o'clock or 6 o'clock, because then, there's even if I have my blue light blocking glasses on and I have the red light on the phone, and so it's like really here like that. You know, even the information, like TikTok or emails or texts or whatever, Instagram, like it's still stimulating, you know? So I'm trying more and more to not go on my phone after like 7 usually, or like after the sun sets. I'm not always perfect with it because there's always work to do and stuff. But that's like a good goal as well to have.
When we used to watch TV, I also found that when you do watch on a projector, you get really sleepy, and you don't have, because you have like the light off a wall, it really also doesn't really affect you, even though it's not really yellow, because it's like annoying to watch a movie in yellow. Like when you just get information or text or whatever, it's fine to like watch like that. But even when I post, I cannot watch it or post with night mode on, because I will not know the white balance.
Yeah,
so,
of course you can.
Yeah, so it's very you can only post in the morning, which is better for the algorithm anyways. But when you watch a movie, I found the projector is the best. I kind of like stopped watching movies because I feel like nowadays it's a waste of time, and I have limited time, and I need to put all my effort towards the podcast and educating myself. But there's some A24 movies that I appreciate. Yeah. But other than that, I completely stopped. But when you do it, I think the best would be like a projector.
Yeah, I would think that has to do with the light. Instead of coming directly from a source, it's bouncing off a wall. So there still could be a good amount of blue light coming off that wall. But I would think, just kind of guessing here based on what I know, that the impact could be less when you don't have the direct beam right into your eye. Also, movies, like you said, it's more of a trance, like you're kind of relaxing, and you can get into a movie and like 2 hours go by and that hits the end and you're like, whoa, where was I? So that's when, I've studied a lot about brainwaves recently too. So like our normal consciousness, we're in beta brainwaves. Like if they measure the brainwaves, we're in the beta state. So we're talking, we're taking in information, we're, learning, and that's normal. And then if we get into like if we get stressed, our brainwaves go up to like mid beta or even high beta. That's when people are stressed, arguing, can't think straight, can't make decisions. That's mid and high beta. Mid beta could be like, you're alert but not super stressed. High beta is like you're losing it, right? You can't think, you can't make good decisions. It's not a time to be creative or anything. Then alpha is when our brainwaves slow down. So we're actually, when we're more in like a relaxed state, we're more creative, like artists kind of, or we're daydreaming. And then theta is when we're meditating. So if we meditate, we go like really deep and we're in theta, and you almost don't even know that you're awake. You're almost asleep. And then delta is like you're out. You're actually in deep sleep. The brain waves are super slow.
Like REM or?
Yeah, like REM. I think in REM we'd actually be in theta. So REM is, that's like the later stages of sleep in the night. It's closer to when we wake up. Those would be a theta, typically. But so, for example, I'm assuming when we're watching a movie, for sure our brain waves are slowing down, unless it's like a horror movie or TikTok. Yeah, like if it's like horror and you're like, oh my gosh, or super intense, then you might actually jump up. But many movies will relax. So yeah, it becomes easier to fall asleep when people watch TV sometimes because they get into a trance, even if the light's stimulating them. But then the problem with that is they might get the 8 hours of sleep, but the sleep actually could be lower quality sleep because they're disrupting their melatonin with the blue light.
Man, and do you take melatonin?
No, I wouldn't take melatonin.
Yeah.
I wear my glasses, so I make.
Because I've heard Huberman say that it's not only highly, not addictive, but it's like your body will stop making them if you overdo it, almost like because it like gets like almost like steroids or whatever.
Yeah.
And also it's bad for your testosterone. And when they write on the packaging 5 milligram melatonin, it can differentiate from 3 to like almost like 8 milligrams, and it's very inaccurate. And there's much better things to take.
Yeah, I would, from what I've studied, I would actually recommend that people just go out and get morning sunlight and just soak up the sun, and then in the evening just cut out the blue light, because we actually. So in order for melatonin to become melatonin, first it has to go to serotonin. So it goes from tryptophan to serotonin, then melatonin. And we actually convert the stimulus and the power to make the tryptophan turn to serotonin is actually the light from the sun. So we actually make the sort of basis for melatonin when we're in the sun and getting light during the day. So this, like, I learned this and it made sense to me when I was a kid. I'd go out to the beach with my family in the summer, only like 1 or 2 weeks. We'd get on this vacation. And I remember running around. So we were running, obviously, and we were playing. But there was this bright light all the time. And I remember laying down in bed those nights and literally feeling like my whole body was just like gushing with light, like so warm and so happy as a kid, like, and then I would just fall asleep like that. And I would sleep so well and I'd wake up like ready to do it all over again. And that was different when I was back home in Philadelphia where, yeah, it might have been sunny, but I wasn't out like the way I would be at the beach. And so anyway, the point is anybody could probably remember a time they're out all day. And a lot of that has to do with the sun. When you get home, you're tired, you want to sleep. A lot of it has to do with the light they get. So just more light even. And people always ask me, the number one question is like, what do I do if it's gray and dark? And we already answered it from the beginning. Just even getting out for like a 1 hour or 2 hour walk, if you live in Austria or if you live in Norway or if you live in New York, it's so much better than staying inside your building all day or staying inside your office, then going to your home and getting in your car in the subway and not getting any light.
No, and there's something that goes still through the clouds.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. So they're still getting the light coming through. It's just, it might be like 30% or 40% if it's a dark gray day, but it's still sunlight. It's better than the artificial light we have. So, yeah.
Every time I'm on, you'll like this, every time I'm on the playground with my kid, sometimes parents come up to me and they like tell me to put on a shirt, and I always tell them I have a vitamin D sufficiency.
I love that.
And I need this more percentage of my body to hit the sun. Otherwise, I'll be depressed. So what are you going to do?
I think that's a great answer.
Yeah, they're like, I'll call the cops. And then I'm like, go ahead, call them. And they never do anyways. But I think that's a great answer because not only would have helped us so much with the whole COVID situation, but also just in general for people to be happier and to like for their mental health.
Yeah. 100%.
And I think that especially as a man, it's so easy to just get extra percentage if you have your whole back exposed to the sun. It's such a quick, like even getting out of the car, going into Whole Foods, you get that quick boost.
Yeah, of course. I'm usually, when I'm walking around, I'm usually taking my shirt off. So today I wasn't sure of the vibe walking out. But yeah, it's kind of like I'll be in cities in Europe and like walking around and feeling really awkward because in Europe, it's not normal, like let's say in general, to
like
walk
LA.
around. Yeah, like in the US, it's like whatever. But in Europe, sometimes I ask myself, like, is it even legal to walk around?
I know.
I don't know. Like in Spain, can you walk around with your shirt off? I don't know. I never looked. But sometimes I do it anyway. So anyway, I love some places in Europe because they're cool with like going nude on the beaches, so you can get the benefits of light on your genitals and everything. Because there is actually research that if you shine light on your balls, basically, you can get more testosterone. Like it increases testosterone because it makes sense because it's directly activating that part of the body with energy that it needs to make the testosterone. So it's pretty cool. There's a lot of stuff you can do. Yeah. So, the guys you just interviewed, Troy and Ra, they're friends of mine, and they were the guys who sort of popularized like the perineum sunning. And that's, one of the benefits of it is you're getting that light down there where we normally don't. Yeah.
Dang. So you do that too?
I do it. I don't do it as much as I'd like to because I'm traveling a lot. And then in certain places, I don't have my ideal setup to go totally nude. But whenever I do, I would always prefer to sunbathe nude if I have the choice. So like when I was in Bali, I had a kind of villa with some space, and that was my preferred method. You can use, for example, like red light therapy. So we're developing red light devices that are more, I would say, advanced, much better, in my opinion, than anything else that exists. But there are plenty of other decent red light devices out there, and the wavelengths that have this effect they've studied are the red light wavelengths in particular. So people can have a red light like a Juve, or there's other devices out there that they shine and they can get that benefit in their home. But I'm always in favor of the sun because even though we might do a study that says, this wavelength and this wavelength can have this effect on our body, what about the 1,000 other wavelengths that we didn't look at? Because there's so many wavelengths of energy in the sun that it would be very difficult to study every single one individually. It would take a lot of time and money, so it's not all done yet, but it'll happen,
Not only that, like sometimes you can't study everything. You can't measure everything, right? There's things you cannot measure. And I always think about that when I take my vitamin D supplement. like you can read into that, and there's like the opinions go left and right. What do you think about vitamin D? Because I always think like you just can't get around the sun. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I do it, I take it, you know.
Yeah, I wouldn't
But
take it. So from
You wouldn't take it?
I wouldn't generally take it. So from the different, again, there's different opinions for sure, but again, it goes kind of, it's related to the melatonin question. So I just want to touch on that briefly. It was a really good point you made. We actually had a customer one time who contacted us. She shared her story, and her daughter had some kind of like childhood cancer or something. So she was, when COVID happened, they were very worried about it. They were very concerned that she was very compromised in her immune system. And they heard somewhere, okay, if we give her melatonin, it can decrease the risk of her getting COVID. That was like one of the early ideas some doctors had or something. So anyway, they did that. Their daughter became dependent on the melatonin. She literally couldn't sleep.
Yeah,
and so
like
it was
insomnia.
yeah, exactly. You can imagine, and like imagine with I think the kid was probably 7 or 8 years old. So imagine that, how difficult that would be. Of course, your kid's gonna just be, it's not good. So anyway, the thing that got her off of the melatonin was actually using our glasses, the red lenses we have, so the ones for nighttime, which are here somewhere. But anyhow, so I would say with
So what's the difference between the red and the yellow?
so the yellow are we call them daylight lenses. These are what we designed for protecting the eyes during the day. If you're on screens or you're under lights like this, or you're at your office, or you're at Whole Foods, or you're anywhere where the lights are these kind of nasty artificial lights, those would be these are for the day. Then the red is for once the sun goes down in the evening. Yeah, feel free, check them out. The red you would use in the evening to protect your melatonin. So the red are like the supercharged sleep supplement, effectively. So the yellow, you can think of it like eye protection from screens and lights, and then the red is like sleep protection at night.
These look sick.
I'm glad you like them. Yeah, well, you can try them all on.
I'll try this one on.
So we last year, regarding the glasses, we did a partnership. Have you heard of the Oura Ring, the sleep tracking ring?
Yes.
Very popular. So I love the company, great people. So last year we had a partnership with them because they wanted to bring something to their audience that could actually help them sleep better. And they said, hey, listen, if you have an Oura Ring, you tell your friend, like say, okay, I have an Oura Ring. Hey, Ken, I want to get you an Oura Ring, or I want you to buy an Oura Ring. Use this link, purchase a ring. And then Aura would, as a thank you, they would give me a pair of glasses for making that referral to a friend, right? So it was this refer a friend program. And so we had so many people wearing Oura rings who maybe didn't, some knew about blue blocking glasses and many people didn't, because, Kim Kardashian's talking about Aura. It's very popular. So a lot of people, they get the ring, but they don't know about health or about sleep or about bodybuilding or anything like that. So they said, yeah, okay, well, it's free. I'll send this link to my husband and he'll buy a ring and then I'll get the glasses. Sure. And so these people a lot of them didn't have any expectation, which is the best, because if they have an expectation, then you can say, oh, well, maybe it's a placebo. The glasses are not working, blah, 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 even though we have lots of science. But people can think this. They had no expectations. A lot of people actually, and we know this from the reviews they left us, many, many hundreds of people after left us all these really great reviews. They're like, yeah, I thought this wasn't going to work. I thought it was a scam. I saw on the internet people said that all this hype that they would help you sleep so well the first night. And the one guy was like, I didn't believe that, but I wanted to try it out. And he's like, I wore them and I literally had the best night's sleep I had in months. And then he wrote, like, believe the hype, they live up to it. So people actually can see their sleep scores go up on their Oura Ring or their Whoop band or their Apple Watch just from putting these lenses on. Let's say sun sets at, 7 here. So if sun sets at 7, you put them on at 7 and then you wear them until whenever you go to sleep, 9, 10.
The yellow ones.
The red. These ones, the ones you have on red, or they're like orange red. So you'd use them at night until the sun goes down, or until I should say you sleep from when the sun goes down. And it causes the brain to make more melatonin, because instead of having the light saying wake up, it's like, no, there's no blue light. It blocks all the blue. Completely, yeah. Okay. That's why they have this color. They block the blue and most green light, because we found that green light also has some effect on our sleep. So for the day, the yellow lenses block basically 95% of the blue. So it's more than enough protection.
But it won't make you sleepy because it won't make the melatonin like these ones.
Yeah, exactly. These, what we recommend for people if they're wearing the yellow lenses is that they go outside every hour if you're working indoors, no matter what. So if you're indoors, if you're at your office, most people get sleepy anyway by 2 o'clock in the afternoon and they have to have another cup of coffee. So we recommend if you want to go out, if you can go out every hour, it's great, right? But so the point of all that is that these people actually, with such a simple mechanism, you block the blue light, your brain says, oh, hey, it's night, let's start making melatonin. And then that melatonin makes them sleep deeper, and they literally could see the deep sleep score on their ring actually went up. Sometimes it went up by double. So it's pretty cool. And we have a lot of professional athletes using our glasses. So I don't know if you follow soccer or European football, but Erling Haaland's a friend of mine, the Man City player. I met him years ago. It's a really chance story in Norway when he was playing for a small team. And so anyway, I gave him some of our glasses, told him, some of the stuff I was learning about. And he went actually to Austria. He was playing in Salzburg, and then he went to Dortmund, and then he went to Manchester City, and he just broke all these records for scoring the most in the season. But he's been using our glasses all this time, and then he got the whole Man City team wearing the glasses, and then they wanted to do an article with us. But so, these guys swear by them because they can feel when they just traveled over the summer to Japan to do some like exhibition matches, and they could experience how these can help with jet lag. So the science is really solid, and then what we do is I wanted to make it cool, because when I learned about this, I was like, I started my business when I was 18, right after high school. And I learned about it when I was in high school. And so there were these the only thing you could get that would block the right wavelengths of blue light were these safety goggles on Amazon. They cost like $12, but they were just like these ugly plastic glasses that looked like the Terminator or something, which, if you want to be like looking like that, that's fine too. But it just wasn't like cool at all, right? Yeah. Nobody even knew about blue light. So people thought you were like double crazy. And so I was like, how can I make this, first of all, what's blue light? Now everybody knows about blue light. And so it's different. But anyway, so that's how it started, was how can we make this actually stylish? And I went to the scientists and asked, like, what are the wavelengths we need to block, and studied it myself, and then worked with the manufacturers to block the right wavelengths. So that's how it came to be, the glasses.
What about one pair of glasses that gives you extra blue light to like wake you up?
It's funny.
Have you ever thought about that?
Bro.
Like blue ones. Like ones that instead of my coffee, I can just put on the blue glasses, and I'm like,
bro. It's funny. I'll just say this: like,
wake up glasses.
You're really tuned into something, because this is actually something I can't say too much, but it's actually something we may already be working on.
Okay,
Yeah,
good. Because I think that's the missing. Because I don't have problems sleeping because I have a child now. Yeah. Also, I'm really in tune with my whole like body temperature. I think that's a big thing too.
Yeah, of course.
So I cold plunge in the morning. My inside temperature rises up.
Is that the cold plunge?
That's the cold plunge.
Hey, let's go.
So my internal temperature goes up, and then gradually goes down. And when it's bedtime, it is cold. Mm-hmm. So I can sleep very well. You can also do that with a sauna before sleep.
Yeah.
Your inside core temperature goes down, and then you just sleep much better. Yeah. You shouldn't like cold plunge before sleeping, because then your core temperature gets very warm, and it's very hard to sleep when your core temperature is warm. So that helps me a lot. But with the glasses, because I love coffee, but if you have like blue glasses that I can just pop on, you don't get the shivers, you don't get any side effects. It's just
You'll be the first one to get a pair, bro. You're very sharp. It's funny. You're
because
really
sometimes that works
in,
with my phone. If I go to the restroom right when I wake up, and I give me like a complete dose of blue light, right? Yeah. But also it's like annoying because I have to look at it, and it would be cool if I could just pop on glasses and start making breakfast or whatever.
Yeah.
So
100%, bro, 100%. You're tuned into the right frequency. I'm pretty amazed. You already got it. So it's cool when someone comes to this with fresh eyes. You get all these ideas, and it's funny. Like you nailed it. You nailed it 100%.
Because I'm all about like, you don't need to be. I'm an athlete, but I think everybody needs to be healthy. Mm-hmm. Everybody needs to look into this. Everybody needs to get out in the sun.
Yeah, bro.
It's not just for soccer players.
Yeah, of course. And that's what we're trying to do is, all these, we have a lot of really cool like celebrities and people who are using our products, billionaires. Mm-hmm. And I feel grateful because I've gotten to meet a lot of these high level people who are interested. Oh, tell me about this. Let me learn some more. And then they want to, change the lights in their house, which is also something we're developing now. Better lights for, the light bulbs overhead. Anyway, it's like how can we bring it shouldn't be, like you said, it shouldn't be reserved for the super rich or the athletes to wear products that make them healthier. Like you said, everybody needs to be healthy, because whether they're a Uber driver or a construction worker, like if you feel better, you think better, you're going to be able to do a better job in your life and be happier.
Especially if you sleep better.
Yeah, of course.
Especially if you're just much more in tune when you're an athlete, because you know the benefit of sleep. When you have performance, high peak performance, like if you just work and you just have a bad day, you don't even worry about what that came from.
Yeah.
You have no idea. But when you sleep as an athlete and you know what a good sleep will do to your performance the next day, you're like, okay, I want this. Like, this
Yeah.
is better than any protein or any stretch or whatever you do to recover. Sleep is it.
Yeah,
you
of
know?
course, and 100%. And that's what Holland was just on the podcast with Impulsive with Logan Paul, and they asked him like, "What's your secret?"
Yeah.
And he said, "Yeah, sleep." And he's like, "Yeah, I wear the blue blocking glasses, and a couple other things." So I couldn't agree with you more. And you made me think about mitochondria. Have you touched on like mitochondria much on the podcast yet?
No.
All right. Well, I think it's a good chance.
I don't even know. I've heard of this, but
Okay, it's perfect. So one of the things that I learned about when I started studying health that interested me, I'd say more than anything, is so I started studying health because when I was like, let's say, as young as I can remember, 7, 8 years old, I was having challenges with my gut. I was having allergies, and you go to the doctors, right? And kind of like you had the experience with the doctor. I went and like, oh, well, you have headaches. Oh, you should take Advil. Oh, you have an issue with your gut. You should take Tums, the anti-acid, which is the worst thing you could do for your stomach. You literally reduce the acid so you can't digest your food. And then they said for allergies, take the Zyrtec, or Claritin, something like this. So I was like, okay, whatever. I was 7 or 8 years old or 10 years old at the time across this time period. So I just accepted it. Then at some point, I started getting really bad breakouts of acne in my skin as I think maybe 13, 14 years old going to high school. And that made me so self-conscious. I was like, there's got to be something wrong. Like, I got to figure this out. And I was having issues with my stomach. So I started searching, how do you fix a damaged gut? Because I figured something must be wrong. And then I learned about the paleo diet, which is, all about eating more natural, like our ancestors, whole foods, not processed. And it just made sense to me. And I was actually shocked. I was like, why did nobody tell me this? Like, none of the doctors mentioned this. Like, we're all eating this junk food. It didn't make any sense to me. But anyway, when I learned about the diet, okay, I was interested. And I did that for a couple years, and I felt a lot better. But I felt deep down like there's a lot more. Like, I didn't reach what I could achieve from what I was looking for. I had still some symptoms. Maybe I was like 80% feeling better from these symptoms. But anyway, I didn't touch what I would say is like the higher potential. So anyway, I started reading and I started learning about light. And I just came across like some forum or some blog saying, hey, some guy basically said, a doctor, he said, did you know that light actually has a huge impact on your health? And that, for example, if you're eating a perfect diet, but your engines in your cells, called mitochondria, if they're damaged, then you actually won't be able to use all that food that you're eating properly, because it makes sense. It's like a car. If you are putting in premium gas, but the spark plugs in the engine are worn down, then you could be putting in regular or premium, so like regular food or high quality food. But if the spark plugs in that engine are worn out, it's not going to be able to run properly and burn that fuel, and it might not accelerate the car. There might be black smoke. And so you change the food, it doesn't fix the engine. You actually have to go in and fix the engine, and the engines are the mitochondria in our cells. But then the thing that actually affects them in a big way is light, also temperature. So when I first learned about this, it made sense to me. Okay, well, and this was from some of the researchers I was following. If you start taking ice baths and going in the sun, it's like one of the fastest ways to improve your mitochondrial health. Like take an ice bath in the morning, get morning sunlight. It resets your body's rhythm. And when we go in an ice bath, it actually forces our mitochondria to make energy, because otherwise you would freeze to death. So they actually have to make more heat.
No, your whole system freaks out.
Yeah, it freaks out. But it's like the most, and everybody who's done an ice bath or just gone in the cold ocean even can like feel, especially the Pacific Ocean, it gets pretty, like kind of cold, like 60 degrees Fahrenheit, 50 sometimes or colder. But people feel like, oh, I feel so alive. And if we do that on a regular basis, it's actually improving how our mitochondria produce energy. So the mitochondria, there's research like the last, this is one of the biggest things that people don't know about when it comes to the diseases and illnesses today. So many people, like I know right off the top of my head, I could probably think of 5 people who in my family or friends or extended family who have gotten cancer or diabetes, obesity. Everyone can think of that because it's like 1 in 2 people now have a chronic disease. And so back in, hundreds of years ago, people died from like bacteria, like tuberculosis and like, things that literally would eat you alive and kill you. And then they developed antibiotics and all those diseases were basically cured like that. But then and that was like the 1940s, 50s. In the last 70 years since then, people aren't really dying from tuberculosis in the developed world, but people are dying from cancer, from autoimmune disease, from diabetes, obesity. So these researchers were studying...
And pharma.
And pharma, yeah. Well, yeah.
Third cause in America.
That's right.
Third biggest cause is pharmaceuticals.
Yeah, pharmaceutical drugs. So exactly. So it gets right to the point. So they were studying the genetics and they thought, oh, well, all these diseases, they must have to do with the genetics because they had discovered in the 50s, the 1950s, they discovered the structure of DNA and they said, oh my gosh, this is the code of life. If you have a disease, there must be something wrong in your genetics. So they studied. They spent now billions of dollars researching the genetics to try to figure out like what's causing these diseases and then how they can cure it with a drug, right? Because if it's in your genetics, you can't really change your genetics. You just have to use a drug. That's the current model, and that's why Western medicine is so wrong. There's other researchers from around the 60s and 70s who started studying mitochondria, so these engines in our cells, and they actually have their own genetics, and they're what makes energy. And so this doctor basically asked the question, well, if everything in life needs energy, like whether you're just sitting still and your heart's beating, your cells are making energy, getting rid of toxins, making proteins, or you're working out, it takes way more energy, obviously. When you do that, you're running, you're thinking. Everything needs energy. And so if we have less energy, eventually we're going to have a disease because if your liver doesn't have enough energy, it's not going to detoxify. You're going to have too many toxins. Or if your brain doesn't have enough energy, like this is really common in development, if the child's brain doesn't have enough energy, their mitochondria don't work, they're going to get autism because their brain can't fully develop if it doesn't have the energy. And so we've created this world where we're not in the sun, so we don't get the energy from the sun, which we would get tons of when we were out in nature. And there are researchers who actually have posited that we get as much as 2/3 of our energy actually from the sun directly and only 1/3 from food. There's different perspectives about that, but I believe it's towards the higher side that we're actually meant to get from the sun. But so we have that, then we replace it with artificial light, which is actually toxic for us and harmful. All the pesticides, all the other toxins, all that stuff, toxic food, obviously. So our cells literally don't have the energy they need to work. And so this one doctor, his name's Dr. Wallace. He studies at University of Pennsylvania. I actually got to meet him one time. Really, really smart. He's now in his 70s. They actually started looking at all these diseases, obesity, diabetes, cancer, autoimmune disease, and they found it's not a problem in people's genetics. It's actually the mitochondria, so these engines, they're just not working well enough, so people can't make energy properly. And so people's systems literally start failing. And then the Western medicine, like, we both had this experience. It's like, oh, just take this drug, or, oh, avoid the sun, or, it's really totally backwards right now.
No, these doctors will tell you, do not go in the sun.
Yeah.
Literally. This doctor told me. I mean.
Yeah. Well,
and he has never asked me, like, do you go to the gym? Not once.
Yeah.
What do you eat? Not interested.
Yeah.
It's all about what drug can I prescribe? What can I put you on? It's literally insanity. And then do you think that like you even eat the sun when you eat? Because the plants get the sun, the animals get the sun,
yeah,
the trees get the sun, So
yeah, of
whatever
course,
you're
bro.
eating, but what if you're eating something processed out of a lab? There's no sun.
Yeah, bro. 100%.
So I guess no energy, even if it's calories. Have you ever eaten, like, my wife is pregnant. Her body refuses restaurant food.
Wow.
Only eats homemade food naturally because it needs to protect the baby. So your body becomes very in tune with what you're doing, much more. Like, we have to like put a lot of effort to get in tune with our body, right? Like, we have to really think about it. Hers is like naturally, because when you're pregnant, you are the least cancerous. Your body instantly becomes the least cancerous as possible. So it's very intact with what you eat, what you drink, what you do to protect new life.
Yeah.
So now she only eats homemade food, and that really made me think, like, because every time I work out, you would think you would have less energy, but you actually get more energy.
Yeah.
People always used to tell me, like, they try to preserve energy, but that actually, like, you have no energy when you lay down a whole day in your bed. and
Yeah.
don't go outside. There's no preserving anything. It
Yeah.
it just eats you up.
Yeah, of
When you
course.
go outside and you do a grueling 1 hour CrossFit workout in the sun or run or go on a hike, you come home and you're like alive. You have
Yeah.
now you have even more energy.
Of course. Yeah, well, I think with that, like you're building more muscle, you're increasing your capacity of your nervous system and your muscles to hold energy. So to me, it makes perfect sense. Like, yeah, you could say, well, I think the only exception would be if someone's really talented at meditation. I think from what I've studied, I've read a lot about Eastern monks who they don't necessarily exercise. Yeah, they're not like bodybuilders, right? They're pretty skinny guys, but they, or, older a lot of the time, but they could sit and meditate and just kind of through breathing techniques and all these, qigong, they can build up a lot of energy in their system through this. But personally, I think it's great to have a balance of both, especially when you're young. Like if you're in your 60s, okay, yeah, you might still do some lifting and some training, but you might not go do a 2-hour, 3-hour hike or CrossFit workout, but still doing something. But then also meditating. I think taking advantage of or taking care of our inner light is so important. But I want to get to that. But you said something so good about the food. Like actually, it's exactly correct. I talk about this on a lot of other podcasts as well. Like
I think Ra was saying that too, right?
Yeah.
You eat sun, right?
Yeah, we literally do. So, for example, if we think about food, like why, if we just ate dirt, we're not getting any energy. Yeah, there might be some minerals, but we're not getting any energy from dirt or from cardboard or something, right? So, well, cardboard is plant material, but it's not something we can break down, so it wouldn't be particularly useful. But so when the sun strikes down on the earth, and the way that photosynthesis happens, so the plants in particular, the way they're making energy is they're taking sunlight, and it's actually taking water and splitting it. And then the one part of the water molecule is basically put out into the environment. So that's the oxygen from the H2O. And then the hydrogen, the plant is actually storing in its sugar. It uses sugar as the building block of energy storage. And then a lot of sugars tightly wound up together make starch, and that can also make cellulose, which is like plant fiber, like wood and stuff like that. And to break that apart takes a lot of energy as well. But so the energy in those chemical bonds literally came from the sun. And so then when we eat food, we're literally just like if you think about a fire. To make a fire, you need some kind of fuel, which is usually wood or something like that, leaves or gasoline, something that the energy came from the sun. And then you just need a spark. You put some energy in, and the spark causes the hydrogen atoms in this structure to break off. And then when the hydrogen's free, it wants to connect with the oxygen in the air and make water. So all fire is actually just making water. We don't see it because it just evaporates. But then the energy that's released is the sunlight that was originally stored there. So when we eat, we're just like a fire. We're literally consuming hydrogen. So like you eat fat or carbs, it's all based on hydrogen. And then we take the hydrogen off with our metabolism, just like a spark, and we breathe oxygen and we make water, and it releases the energy from the sun. So we're literally like a fire inside of us, like Wim Hof, the Iceman, talks about inner fire. It's literally the exact same chemical reaction that we use to make energy, just it's more controlled. So like a fire, the energy goes everywhere. For us, we actually use it to do things, to make ATP. So anyway, there's actually, there are studies, I should say, or there's anecdotes more than studies of people taking like a certain type of sensitive light meter and putting it against like fresh fruits and vegetables. And there's a lot of energy present in that food versus like processed food, there's none effectively. So you're totally right. Processed food's not ideal from an energy perspective at all. It's just like empty calories, they say.
Yeah, maybe even with the meat, I would think if an animal gets a lot of sun, there might be a difference in eating it than an animal that is in a cage in like some sort of house, right?
100%.
That is in the shade all day, or in the like in some sort of like no sunlight.
Yeah.
For their
100%.
entire life.
100%. And like that 100%, there's an effect. And then if you think about the like energy of that animal, like being depressed and sad, we get that energy too if we're eating that.
That's why it's so crazy when you eat wild animals like venison. It's almost like I don't know if like you make that up, but like it's almost like you eat like some sort of like history, like what that animal has been through, all the running, all of what it smelled, like its
course.
entire life is in this meat, ingrained kind of like, and when you eat it, like you feel some sort of way.
Yeah.
Compared to like when you eat some sort of chicken that
Yeah.
has no life and it was inside, it makes you like it's so empty.
Yeah, yeah, of course. I mean, you talk to Ra and Troy, so they're like, to me, in the best way, they're very like out there guys. Like they have really, really controversial ideas in the best way. There's nothing I could say I think that would compare with the level of the stuff they're doing in some respects as far as like being really out there. But what I can say that's about this is I've studied in pretty good detail how light works in our body as well. And it turns out like we actually have light inside of our cells, right? So it's actually pretty scientifically proven that we have light and our cells use light to communicate. And there was actually a researcher named Robert Becker. He wrote a cool book called The Body Electric, if anybody wants to check it out. But basically he was wondering, he was in his residency in the 1940s. He was studying to be a doctor. And it was World War II, and he was working in New York City. And he had all these soldiers coming back from France and Germany who were literally getting, they had their arms cut off and legs cut off and stuff. And he started asking, like, why can salamanders regrow a whole limb when humans can't? And he started researching what's happening in a salamander. He would actually cut off their arms or legs and watch it grow back and measure the chemicals and everything. And he found that there's actually this electricity, this very strong electric energy that's present in this regrowth process, regeneration. And then he started looking at all kinds of other animals, including humans, and he found that this energy is actually present. So basically, he proved that our bodies aren't just chemical, and this is like one of the mistaken ideas of Western medicine is that we're all just fully chemical, that we're not electric or energetic. It's just all chemicals, and it's all kind of like not random per se, but that it's what's happening in our body is all chemical, just to put it that way. So there's not a higher intelligence that's organizing it. But he found no, there's actually this electrical system in the body. He documented it. And so actually, even though we don't see it, there's actually like an energy field. People can call it your aura and this kind of thing. But there's actually an energy field that can be measured around our body. And, people who are healthier, more vital, typically would have a bigger, stronger field. And so you can almost feel like someone walks in a room, you might not even see the person, but you almost can like turn your head because that person has such a strong energy, right? Or like if there's a girl, who you're into, you don't have to touch each other. Like you just could see them, and that energy that's like the visual information in this case, you can also feel their energy field. Or your eyes could be closed and you could like feel their presence next to you, or like touch, just the slightest touch, and like feel electric, right? And so there's this energy in our body that's actually really well studied. And all that's to say, when you say about the animal and its history and this and that, like the energy is in that animal's field. So when you're eating a piece of its meat, actually, yeah, you probably are getting all this information.
That's crazy.
I would say so. Yeah, it makes sense. The science is there. It's not it's not woo-woo.
Man, and it makes so much sense too also, like, because I have like vegan friends and I have like friends that like don't eat meat, and it's like always like there's now it like I've never thought about an animal getting sun or animal not getting sun. There's so much differences there. What can you tell me about skin cancer?
Yeah, it's a really, really good question. So the main thing I would focus on to make it like really easy for people is in the last, let's say 100 years or so, we've started avoiding the sun significantly, like in the 1920s and 30s. So I have to take it back a little bit further, actually, to start. So like a little history of sun. So first of all, people should understand that on Earth, sunlight is the energy source that's responsible for life existing, right? It gives all the energy, right? So not all the energy, but the majority of the energy, I should say, comes from the sun, right? For all the plants to grow, and then the animals that eat the plants and grow, and then some animals eat the other animals. But like you said before, it's actually like the root energy is coming from the sun. So we are eating sunlight. Anyway, so what that means is that for humans to evolve, for people who believe in evolution, like which I think most people probably do listening to this, the energy that powered us to evolve, to become more complex with a bigger brain and so on, was sunlight. That process takes energy, right? And so where we exist at this really high level of our biological function, it took a good amount of energy for us to get to this point in our evolution. Anyway, so if we take the sun away from our body now, we could actually start to see de-evolution, like going back, simply because we're missing the energy source that was necessary for us to evolve in the first place. So anyway, that's just like the background history for people to understand, like evolution was powered by sunlight, right? And so then if we think about the history, like the Romans, the Greek people, all of these ancient cultures, the Egyptians, they understood that the sun is absolutely the most powerful source of energy. So they actually had these gods that represented the different forces of nature. So for example, they had a god that represented the ocean. They had a god that represented the rain. They had a god that represented the earth. They had a god that represented the sun. And typically when they looked at it, the god that represented the sun was the most powerful of all of the gods. So the ancient civilizations knew the sun was like not just a little important, like really important. And the Romans and the Greeks, they actually had like rooms, like open rooms in their houses where they could actually sunbathe, right? So they knew about this. Then we went into the Dark Ages. And so like I think it's not necessarily a coincidence that the Dark Ages are called the Dark Ages. There was like less knowledge about the importance of light for our body. It kind of went away in this time. Anyway, then in the 1900s, there was a researcher who was trying to figure out how to cure tuberculosis. So kids would get this really bad tuberculosis on their skin. It's called lupus vulgaris, and it was very fatal. Like most people who got it would die. And he just started shining ultraviolet light on this disease, and it killed the bacteria, and it cured this disease. And this guy, he's a Danish guy, and he got a Nobel Prize in medicine for this discovery. He also found that red light was very good for inflammation, for helping to heal the body. So this was over 100 years ago. So there's all this research. Then there were these guys who started going to the Swiss Alps, these doctors from Switzerland and France and even Germany as well, and they were using what they call heliotherapy. So the Greek god of the sun is Helios. So they used heliotherapy, this sunlight therapy, on people with wounds, really severe injuries. They used it on people with tuberculosis. They even found that kids who had this disease called rickets, where their bones would grow, like instead of growing straight, they'd be all bent, just shining ultraviolet light on those kids to, of course, now we know it's vitamin D, it increases their vitamin D, their bones would actually straighten out while they developed. And they were in England when it was like so much industry that there was no sun coming through. Like actually there was so much smog in the air that was actually preventing the sun. Not like clouds, but like industrial smoke, right? So anyway, and they found that this had all these benefits. So these doctors created these clinics in the Alps that showed that they proved that they could actually heal people with the sun. And they would be really slow. Like you'd be on a bed and they would roll people out into the sun and just do their feet for 5 minutes the first day. And then they take them in, and then they do the next day they do their feet for 5 minutes, and then they'd put their lower legs and have 5 minutes. So their feet had 10 minutes total and their lower leg had 5 minutes. And then they keep going up 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes until they do the whole body. And so they could get the palest, sickest person to acclimate to the sun and then to basically heal from almost any condition. Anyway, so back to your question about skin cancer. So like people should know though that the sun has been really important for health. In the 1920s and 30s, there was this craze, in particular in the United States, about like sunbathing. Like it became likely because of this, largely because of these developments, the sun became super hot, like super popular, right? And there was more like people there was more liberalization, like with women kind of showing off more of their skin, like wearing more open bathing suits and so on. This was the culture in the 1920s and so on, and in the United States. And so people were getting some skin cancers. It did exist. And so researchers were trying to figure out like where is this coming from? And what they did was they devised these studies, and they took animals and they actually shined them with ultraviolet light, but like not the sun, but just these really intense ultraviolet lights. And they actually found that would cause skin cancer for these animals.
Is that what it's in the tanning spas or no?
Yeah, actually. But they did like really, really like top, like super high doses that you would not get from a tanning spa. And then they concluded like, okay, yeah, this causes skin cancer. So all that's to say about skin cancer, if you overdose on the sun or on ultraviolet light, it's possible that you could cause skin cancer. But there's like a really big but. the skin cancer rates since we avoided the sun and started wearing sunscreen have gone up so high, like significantly in the last 50 years or so, right? So like I know a lot of people who are getting, or not a ton, but a few people have gotten skin cancer, like family and so on, who literally never go outside. Like they work in an office their whole life. And then they say, oh, the sun caused my skin cancer. It's like you sat under a fluorescent light or a LED light for 30 years. Like that, and there's actually evidence that fluorescent lights, which are now being replaced by LEDs, but that those could actually cause skin cancer. So I would say if you overdose on sun, which I wouldn't recommend, and it's not a good idea, like you wouldn't want to drink too much water. You could die from too much water, right? Like, you could do so many things that are healthy and do too much. Like if you took an ice bath for 5 hours, you could probably die.
Yeah.
You could probably get hypothermia, right? But like
Probably sooner.
yeah, maybe sooner, depending on how cold your ice bath is, right? So anyhow, like the sun's good in a reasonable dose. What we don't want to do is push it too far and sunburn. And I've had to learn because I've sunburnt myself way too many times. So like, okay, where's a limit, right? And build up your exposure really slowly like these doctors did in the Swiss Alps back in like 100 years ago. But to blame the sun, which is like it's so responsible for our health and our existence for skin cancer, to me, the best thing I could think of is if a kid blamed their mother, like if you said, hey, mom, like all of my problems are your fault because you gave me life, like, yeah, okay, in some way you can say this logic, but like it's not really the best logic, right? The sun, it's more responsible for our life. And so we have to be responsible. And then just one more thing on this is like, if we look at all the other toxins that we're exposed to, like glyphosate, which is like one of the main pesticides, or herbicides, I should say, and they spray it on all of the food, even organic food sometimes is contaminated. They know that causes cancer of all different kinds, right? We know that 5G, 4G, 3G, even radiation from cell phones, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi can cause cancers and different things like this. Toxic food. Now people are eating so many rancid seed oils like vegetable oil, soybean oil, canola oil, which also when it's it gets into our skin and that's more easily damaged, and that could potentially lead to more inflammation, which can lead to cancer. There's so many other factors, but at the end of the day, when we look at it and we say, okay, skin cancer rates are going up and we're getting less and less sun and wearing more sunscreen and more sunglasses, I just suggest that people just think like, how could that possibly make any sense? Shouldn't skin cancer rates be at all-time lows because people are getting less sun, wearing more sunscreen? Actually, I have to share another detail. This is so important. Sunscreen is designed to try to copy melanin. So in our skin, we have the best sunscreen. It's melanin. It's our natural pigment that, makes somebody white or tan or black or, Asian. It's the levels of melanin. But even the whitest person, unless they have albinism, they're albino, the whitest person can get some tan if they build it up slowly, right? And so what happens when we build up our tan is melanin takes sunlight, like the ultraviolet, which if we get too much, it can cause sunburns, it can be damaging. A little bit's really good. But so it takes that ultraviolet light and basically reduces its energy, so it's actually not actually bad for us. It's effectively harmless. And melanin's like 99.9% effective at this process. Now, sunscreens at best are like 80% effective at this. It's even usually lower. So what that means is when you put sunscreen all over your skin and you have it all over, it's getting irradiated by the sun, and the goal is to slow down that energy so it's no longer damaging, to absorb the ultraviolet light before it gets into the cells. Now, the issue with that is that the inefficiency in the sunscreen and the strong, because ultraviolet light's very strong. Like, for example, if you leave a painting out in the sun or a couch over a few years or even a few months, it will wear away all the colors because the ultraviolet's that powerful. So what happens to the chemicals in sunscreen, that percentage of inefficiency is that those chemicals are actually getting damaged. And when ultraviolet light, it breaks apart chemicals. What the chemicals do is they're trying to steal electrons. They're trying to steal energy. So you have these, they're called like free radicals. They're very inflammatory. They cause more inflammation. And so then these damaged inflammatory chemicals are actually absorbing into our bloodstream because that's where all the sunscreen goes. And then they're causing inflammation inside of our body. So it's like, to me, regular sunscreen is probably like the worst idea somebody could possibly have, because you're literally taking chemicals, which 5 or 6 years ago when I was first talking about this stuff, because I learned about it and I wanted to share it, it seemed like crazy. Last summer, like 10 or so of the major sunscreen companies recalled the sunscreen because it was proven that one of the chemicals in them causes cancer. So like the biggest sunscreen companies were recalling the sunscreen. So it's like not even a conspiracy theory or anything like that. Like they know it's true. So anyway, that's my thoughts about skin cancer. Don't get too much sun. Build up your tan slowly, but it's not just the sun that's causing skin cancer. In fact, it's probably more to do with all the toxins we're exposed to. So you do a ton of editing. I assume you have to do a lot of editing.
Yeah, I used to. I mean, I edited over, I guess, like 4,000 TikToks. Wow. Hundreds of YouTube videos.
Yeah.
Well, podcast is not much editing.
Yeah.
Once you figure out the forth and back. But I do all the editing for it because the TikToks you can't really give it to somebody else because it changes all the time, the algorithm. So you need to be very on top of things.
Yeah.
And it will also take an enormous amount of time to explain to somebody what I just shot.
Yeah, of course.
If that makes sense.
I see what you mean. So it's just more efficient to do it yourself.
It's much more efficient and just. You know how social media, it's the same, how podcasts are the same kind of because like consistency is key.
Yeah.
It's not, one podcast is not gonna make or break you, so you need to always be on it. Mm-hmm. And most people give up.
Yeah.
So you need to be efficient.
Yeah.
You don't need to be perfect. Even if the video is out for 5 seconds or 10 minutes, you need to, well, content is key. What we talk about is key.
Yeah, of course.
Not if the video is a little bit more crisp, but the more you get into it, the more nerdy you get about details. So
yeah, well, I love that. I mean, for people who are editing, speaking of like the light stuff, it just to me it makes sense that people should ideally, it's not always possible, but ideally do the editing during the day because then you can see the full blue without disrupting your sleep.
Only in the morning.
Yeah,
I
the
only
morning
edit
would be
in the
the
morning.
best. That's really smart. Yeah.
Because once my kid is home, there is no more editing.
Yeah.
So I edit everything in the morning. I get that blue light, and it feels good. Feels good to edit in the morning. Also, your brain is just fresher. It's kind of like sucks to wake up and edit because, like, I don't know. In the ideal world, I would like go out and do something else.
Yeah.
But when it has to be done, it has to be done. And
well, you know, even if you just go out and get like 10 to 15 minutes of just sunlight or like even 10 minutes, even 5 minutes is better than none.
Yeah.
Just like standing outside, even if you don't have a direct view of the sun, if you can go up to your roof or if you can just, you know, just let the light hit you from off the sky or reflecting off a building, it's still better than nothing. Just getting outside for 5 or 10 minutes and everybody can do that. It's somewhat easy.
All right, think about this. When you really think about it, there is some sort of like paste, right? White paste that we put on our body so we can stay in the sun longer, right? When you really think about it without any fake media, propaganda, do this, skin cancer, that. If you think about it, there's a paste that you put on your body. First of all, it feels disgusting. It has disgusted me since I was a kid. Never wanted to put this on. It just feels weird and gross. It's so like fucking thick. It's so gross.
Yeah.
It's not like a spray, like a water spray or something fresh. Your body rejects it instantly. Yeah. Every kid would be like, "What the fuck are you doing, mom? Right? Get this shit off me."
Yeah.
And now I can stay longer in the sun that I'm supposed to be. Well, how does that make any sense?
Yeah.
What? Have you heard of shade? Just go in the shade.
Exactly.
The sun burns you for a reason, no?
Yeah.
I'm from Austria. I'm as white as they get. My son is as white, like pale, right? But I'm pretty tan at this point in my life. And that's all due to a very slow, I used to get skin burned when I was a teenager, for sure, because I would just overexpose. Yeah. But since I've been in LA, I don't expose like, on purpose, like lay in the sun for hours and hours. I don't tan, no tanning, but I always get sun. Yeah. And that just slowly made me darker than I am born. And it just makes no sense that you would want to be in the sun longer than you're supposed to. It's like you're cheating nature and you cannot cheat nature. So it just...
Yeah.
Same with the fake light, I guess, because when the sun is down and you have no light, there is no light.
Yeah.
So you cannot get light, right? You only can get fire.
Yeah.
And fire makes you sleepy.
It does,
so now we made fake light, so you cheat it so you can stay up all night, right, on blue light. but you're actually just cheating nature.
Exactly. It's exactly right. Literally, like I love the way you put these things. Like it's so right to the point. Honestly, it's true. Like so, blue light tricks our brain. It tricks our hormones to wake us up. So you make more cortisol, but we don't have the full spectrum of the sun with the red and infrared, which gives power. So it'd be kind of like if imagine like you're trying to start your car and you're just holding the ignition like, but the engine's not going to actually start. So eventually you'll just kill your battery because you're just putting in the hormones to wake us up, but you don't have the power. And it's like they say burning the candle at both ends. Like you're just literally taking time off your life. You're making yourself in a way sick, running our cells without the full amount of power. So I completely agree. And about the paste of sunscreen, like it's, for me, it's so funny. I was a unique kind of kid where I actually somehow, it's ironic, like it was meant to happen this way so I could learn a lesson, but I actually believed the lie. So like I remember being with my friends being like, guys, you got to wear sunscreen. Like it was so funny, like, can you imagine? And when I smell the spray sunscreen, it's so toxic. Like it's the spray.
You cannot tell me, like when my mom is like, this one is the healthiest. This one is the best. I'm like, what are you saying?
Yeah.
Like, but don't you always feel like you have the answers always inside?
Yeah, I completely agree. Actually,
like
so
when you're really in tune, you don't need a doctor telling you this. You don't need Huberman to tell you the sun is good.
Yeah.
When a doctor tells me the sun is not good for you, I don't understand, like, what he means. Like, what are you saying? Like, I know the sun is good for me. It feels good. How can it be bad for me? It feels so good. You're right? When I drink alcohol, I feel intoxicated. I don't feel good. You cannot tell me this is good for me. You cannot tell me a glass of wine is good for me if it feels bad.
Yeah. And it's interesting, too, like what you're saying, the irony of our society is that, like, they want people to think that alcohol is good for you to have, like, oh, just have some alcohol here and there. Of course, doctors aren't generally saying alcohol is good, but there's this idea like, oh, have a couple glasses of wine per night, it's fine, but the sun's toxic. Or, like, oh, you should take these opiate pharmaceuticals. They're totally fine. And yeah, by the way, they kill like, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of people a year, but they're fine. But the sun is toxic. It's just really, and some people sadly are so convinced by the system, like I guess I was when I was a little kid, that they just trust the authorities and trust everything that the government says, that as if they have the best interest for us. But if we look at it at the end of the day, it is the way it is. These companies, the drug companies, the pharmaceutical companies, their incentive is to make money, and they're publicly traded corporations. And one of the crazy things about this is that we actually, most people, I mean, I actually am not really invested in the stock market, but most people who have a lot of money in stocks, they're actually invested in the companies that make the toxic chemicals, that make, the toxic factory farmed meat, the banks that are, it's a mess. The whole thing is a bit of a mess. Banks, as far as what are they doing wrong, I think people can go talk to people who know much more about the banks than I do, but they're doing a lot of things that are not really in the interest of the average person, like creating these financial collapses, manipulating money in ways that isn't really how most people would want their money used. So anyway, these industries, people can choose to trust them, but I think your type of audience, it seems like, are people who are going to be a little bit more aware of like, yeah, maybe because the way the system's set up, the government actually doesn't have my personal best interest, and they're not going to fight for me. I have to fight for me. They're going to fight for their next election, to be the president or to be the senator or whatever, or the mayor. They're going to say what they have to say to get people to like them. So they're fighting for themselves, but, we have to take responsibility for ourselves, I believe, for our health.
And even if you love the system, like let's say you're like in love with the Matrix,
yeah,
you think it's so great, right? They always make the best laws for you, even if the sun and water is very hard to profit from, because everybody can go outside and get the sun, right?
Yep.
Everybody can go to a cold river and put themselves in a cold plunge, so to speak.
Yeah.
So it's much easier, or not easier, it's much more profitable if there's a pill or something I can sell you. Even if I'm not like a purely evil, like I don't always believe that every corporation is purely evil, trying to harm you in every way possible. Yeah. But sometimes it's just much better. It makes just more money if I sell you something than if I tell you to go outside in the sun.
Yeah. And
because then you're like, okay, doctor, then I'll never see you again, right?
Yeah.
I'll just be healthy then. But it's much easier if he can sell you something.
Yeah. Yeah, they say, don't hate the player, hate the game. And in some ways, I would say that the system it's just set up in a way that's not necessarily looking out for every individual's best interests. So, and that takes me to, you mentioned something earlier about like we have the answers within. I really believe that. So I was doing all this stuff for, almost 10 years from when I was 11, 12 years old, first looking into health as a kid, like just going on the internet, researching about diets and trying these diets. And it was always about something like outside of me. So like the diets, and then about like light. And I think light's really important. That's why I started a company to make the products, and I wear them every day, and they help people. We're working on all sorts of stuff, like I mentioned, like other lenses and lights and light therapy devices. And so for me, it's important because the science supports it, and it's benefiting people and it's benefiting me. But there was a time when I was running my business, and I was kind of, although I was into health, and that was like that's what my company was in, I was actually becoming someone on the computer all the time, like almost unconsciously. I didn't realize what I was doing, not going out and training and taking care of myself the way I need to and should and wanted to really deep down. So anyway, I had this sort of like soul searching period where I started asking like, what am I doing with my life? What's the direction I want to go? And I started looking more and more into meditation, and it made sense to me that the stuff that I had read about light and energy, this was all Western scientific textbooks about, electricity and light in our cells, that our cells actually communicate with pulses of light. And so I was reading some different books about different spiritual teachers and things like Qigong, Tai Chi, these energy practices they've used for thousands of years in China and India. And I thought maybe this is something that would make sense to do, to actually start to work on my own energy, meditation in particular. Because I actually felt like a victim, even though it was interesting. I had a business, was successful, traveling around the world, and on the surface it looked like, going to Bali, going to this place or that place. But inside I really felt like, it doesn't feel right. And for me, it made sense that if we have light inside of us, like our cells are communicating with light, that it would be a good idea to actually take care of that, and instead of just always putting our attention on everything outside of us, which is exactly what I was doing, like actually take time to go inward. And I think some people do this naturally, like some people, they journal every day, or they, read a book and they kind of get in touch with themselves. But I think especially for a lot of guys, at least for me at the time, I was like, I'm going to build this company, I'm going to charge, I'm going to work hard. And I was more in like the intellectual pursuit than like the physical pursuit. But, there's benefits to both and combining all of it. But I was just going so hard, and I was losing this connection with myself, like going hard with my brain, I guess you could say. And then I was like physically not feeling my best and mentally feeling worse and worse. And so anyway, I started, I think this is just important for people if they understand how light affects their body and they can do all of this stuff outside. Like I would just suggest to anybody who's interested, if they want to take care of their deeper energy, to look at anything like meditation or stuff like this, because then if you get everything right from the outside, like the sun and blocking blue light at night, you can feel a lot better physically. But if you're not taking care of that inner light, I found that you might still feel like empty inside, or you might, for example, somebody might have a deep down, like a calling, like you said, we know stuff inside of us, right? Like people might feel, I'm meant to be a actor, or I'm meant to start a business. Or I just had an Uber driver who was a really kind guy just coming over here from Syria, and he left his family like 8 years ago, he said, and he hasn't seen his family since then. There's a war over there. It's hard to go back, the whole thing. And he was telling me about how he has an interest to start a business. He's a young guy, probably less than 30. And I was just thinking, man, like, you can start a business. Of course you can, and he seemed pretty confident. Is very much like, I had no doubt that he will. But the reason I say this is because everyone inside has some greatness, of course. And I, from my own experience, feel that we actually have to really go in and connect to that and give it time in order for it. Because if we just get up every day and we just go to work and we get in our car and we drive and then we see our friends and it's the same friends, then we're not necessarily going to make that opportunity to go to the next level. So when we talk about light, I think it's really important to talk about this idea of inner light, and I call it like cultivating, like taking care of our inner light. So I think that's important for people to know too.
Is inner light is that in connection with the third eye, or how is that?
Yeah, so it's something that I'm deeply studying now and learning more about. But essentially, the third eye, so they are definitely connected. So in the ancient Hindu
And also
scriptures,
the gland.
yeah,
right?
the pineal gland, yeah,
The pineal gland.
they
You know what Troy said? He said when you have a vaginal birth, the pineal gland gets squeezed on the way out and actually releases all these hormones. And and you don't get this because the head gets squeezed like crazy, and it's very squishy,
yeah,
and it's deformed even when the baby arrives. It's almost like a cylinder.
yeah.
It's crazy. It looks crazy, and it goes back like in minutes. You can watch. I watched my son. His head was like long, like a cylinder. It got squeezed. The gland got
Yeah.
squeezed, and then and Troy knows much more about this. Go listen to
Yeah.
the episode with the
course.
crazy health nut. But when you have when they cut
Crazy
you
health
open, you don't have that.
Yeah. So actually, I was born through C-section because I'm a triplet, so a 3. So it makes sense.
You're a triplet?
Yeah.
Holy
I have
shit.
Yeah. So my parents. It's interesting. Like I owe my life to the Western medical system because my mom had trouble getting pregnant. They did in vitro, right? So we were conceived not through like the normal process, but through the sort of scientific process. And for me, it's mind blowing. It's like, wow, I'm alive because of Western medicine, but my whole life is showing me that there's also flaws. So like Western medicine's great at things like in vitro, or for example, if you break your arm, it can help you fix your arm. But for these chronic diseases, it's not. It's not making an effect right now. So anyway, it's not having an impact. So anyway, when we talk about the third eye, all the ancient cultures, I think what Troy's saying is right, by the way, and I can share why, but all the ancient cultures have this understanding that we have this, third eye, not all ancient cultures, but for example, ancient China, India in particular, the Hindu scriptures, Egypt, etc. They understood that there's this connection we have to greater consciousness, and it has something to do with this part of our brain. They call it, again, the third eye or the pineal gland, or they have the symbol that represents the eye of Horus. So anyway, modern researchers, of course, discovered the pineal gland, and it looks like it's the direct link, and this is what, very wise spiritual masters who know much more than me focus on and share, and that's where I'm taking this from, that this pineal gland is the modern scientific link to this ancient third eye. And so we have this actual energy system. And so what the connection I would make between the third eye and inner light is when I read these books, understanding that, okay, we have light in us, our cells communicate with light. The stimulus for our cells to divide so we can grow, mitosis, the cells actually pulse little small amounts of ultraviolet light. So that's the other thing, is they say ultraviolet light is toxic for us in Western medicine, but it's actually how our cells communicate. So they don't know such basic information about how our body works in Western medicine. I don't know why. They haven't read some of the research and so on. Maybe they think it just doesn't matter or whatever. Of course, they're so busy, like you said, your doctor, he doesn't have time to read this research because he's just focused on, he has to see the next patient, sell some drugs. The system's not set up ideally, right? So anyway, we're also an energy field, right? So the ancient understanding is that we have these 7, they call them chakras, right? But in a more scientific way, we could call them energy centers. So there's a great, I would say, there's a doctor, and he's a researcher and an educator in this field named Dr. Joe Dispenza, who talks a lot about this, and I'll reference him a few times. But so Joe Dispenza talks about how each energy center is actually linked to sort of clumps of neurons that are responsible for the function of different organs. So if we're made up of an energy field, it makes sense that there would be some organization and structure in the field. For example, one of the questions that this doctor who wrote the book The Body Electric and was amputating the salamanders and measuring everything and found this electricity, he asked the question, well, how is it that the cells know to become a liver cell, a kidney cell, a brain cell, a nerve cell, a reproductive cell, a blood cell? How do they know? Because every cell has the same exact 23 chromosomes. So all of our cells have the same information in the genetics. And so Western medicine and traditional biology doesn't have a good answer for how these genes are turned on and off. But what he found is that there's actually information in this energy field. And Sadly, it hasn't been studied enough because his lab was shut down because for other reasons, their research was defunded because they were questioning the health effects of electromagnetic radiation on the body, so that the government took away their funding that they were getting. So it needs to be studied more to really be understood. But anyway, we have this energy field. There's some information that tells cells. So it's like if a cell finds itself in this area, so you can take stem cells, just they're like undifferentiated cells. They could become anything. And then they go exactly where they need to go, where your body needs the most new energy. So it's like the body has this intelligence involved. Anyway, so it makes sense then that within this light body or this energy field that organizes our cells, there's particular areas of interest, we could say, or areas where there's more energy and certain densities and so on. So anyway, these chakras, that's basically what they are from a scientific perspective. So for example, the first chakra is understood to be related to our sexual organs. So like if somebody just uses their consciousness, like their inner light, their mind, and you just take your mind and somebody thinks about something like really sexual, if you do that enough, you'll actually see a change in the chemistry in your body there. Like somebody might all of a sudden get an erection. Like if you just close your eyes, you don't have to watch anything. You don't have to look at anything. You don't have to be with a girl or anything or a guy. You just literally close your eyes, imagine an image or a sexual energy you're feeling, and you can actually activate that energy center like with your brain and like, probably have an erection. You could, most people could do that with their mind. If they thought certain thoughts or something, right? Well, same thing if we do that with food. If you imagine especially if you're hungry and you start imagining food, you could make yourself pretty hungry pretty quickly. If you imagine, and so that would be like our second energy center would be digestion. Our third energy center is about like power, and it's connected to our adrenal glands. So for example, if you literally just take your consciousness and you started thinking about like some goal you want to achieve, or like someone on the negative side, like someone you're angry with, you can actually literally feel in your body, just you don't have to do anything, you just sit completely still. You could actually start thinking about like how you're going to feel, and like you can feel the stress hormones pumping just from your mind. Same with your heart. If you actually, it's a little harder because it's like more subtle energy, but if you put your brain and you focus your energy on your heart and you breathe and you relax, you could actually start to like, and again, people don't train ourselves with this a lot, but you could actually start to feel like your heart open up, and you could feel yourself feel like, oh, I'm safe, like I'm good, like life's good, like I'm safe. And Dr. Joe Dispenza says, when our heart is open, we actually feel safe to create. When we're not just down in our lower energy centers for survival, we can actually be creative, because that's like where the human starts. Like, so our lower three energy centers about sex, digestion, and power, it's like our animal center. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just like to be able to control it so it doesn't control us. So we're not controlled by sex or food or, stress, but we're in charge of that. And that's what meditation is all about, is actually learning how to raise our energy from the lower energy centers. So to activate them consciously by putting your attention on them, so that you know that you're in control of them throughout the day. So something comes up, and instead of, which most of us are because it's how we've been raised, something comes up, something happens, and we're like, oh my God, I'm so mad because this thing happened. It's actually like we can learn how to control that, but it takes time and attention, and it doesn't just happen if all we do is wake up every day and just react to what's outside of us. So anyhow, just going through, you could actually activate your fourth center, your heart, with this. You could activate your fifth center. If you just put your energy on your throat, you could actually give it energy. Same with the sixth center. So this is the third eye. So yeah, to your question, the third eye, I would say it's like a key part of the chakra system. In fact, in the traditional spiritual wisdom and texts, they believe that the third eye is our connection to higher levels of consciousness. And if people can really activate their third eye, they'll actually see and pick up information that's beyond what we can see with our regular eyes. So like intuition, that's like where they say it's the center of our intuition. So, when people have a feeling like I just shouldn't go this place today, or I just shouldn't do this, or I don't have a good feeling about this person, the idea is that that's our third eye is actually sensing that information, because everything around us is just energy, right? Like we see less than 1% of reality. Like what we see, the visible light, it's less than 1%. There's energy that we don't see, right? Like the energy that I was saying earlier, you could feel somebody's energy when they walk in a room and so on. Or if somebody's like lying to you, you can kind of almost feel it. And it's actually, I think, really important to trust that, from what I've learned about this intuitive stuff. We don't a lot of the time trust that because we don't think it's real. Anyway, and then the last one they say in the traditional scriptures is that our top energy center, they call it the crown, the seventh energy center. It's like our connection to like a God or the higher energy. If people don't believe in God, just like the energy of the universe that exists, even if we don't want to call it God or something, there's an energy that's around us and organizing everything. And that's our connection. And so if people feel like in some time in their life, like pure ecstasy, like pure bliss, a lot of the time people can feel like almost like a electricity in their cells. So anyway, I think from what I've learned and what light has taught me, one of the most important things we could do in addition to getting sunrise and like you said, just getting out and getting some sun, even getting the sunset. I call this the light diet. So like instead of being all about food, it's like the diet of light. And that's my Instagram, the light diet. I'm working on doing a lot more content because I've been so focused on the company. I haven't done as much social stuff and education. I go on a lot of podcasts. But anyway, the light diet would be basically getting more sun. So getting the sunrise, getting the sunset, eating with the sun. We didn't talk about that a lot, but a lot of people in America in particular eat their biggest meal at 7 in the evening. The problem is our digestion is the strongest in the middle of the day. So we've trained our bodies so that we're excited and ready, so the system will adjust and make more of the digestive enzymes in the evening. But biologically, the best time to eat is in the middle of the day to eat our heaviest meal because we're actually going to break it down more. We're going to get more of the nutrients, more of the proteins. It'll be better for biology, for if you're doing bodybuilding and so on. That's what the research is saying, that our metabolism is the strongest in the middle of the day. And if we eat late, the issue is that a lot of the time we won't even break the meal down fully, and then it's going to disrupt our sleep because we're not meant to be sleeping and digesting at the same time. So that's another piece of the light diet. Another thing is, and we can get into that more if you want, but another important thing is taking care of our inner light. I think that's probably the most important now I found. Like if you take care of your inner light, your inner state, your mindset, people can call it, you really take good care of that, which is hard. I'm not a master at it by any stretch, but I'm working on it every day. Then everything else can kind of work out. And so anyway, those are kind of the key pieces of the light diet.
Would you say somebody who has no purpose or doesn't feel... People feel lost, I think, nowadays, right?
Yeah.
Because it's right. Like sometimes you have like a bigger calling and you feel like almost like God is acting through you. Like that top crown. You can call it God, the universe, whatever you want.
Yeah.
But it's almost like I had somebody on who said when he writes a song, he lets the song or the music almost go through him. It's not him writing it. It's more like you let God or the universe work through you. And I feel like that with a lot of things. Sometimes I don't even feel like I choose to do a podcast or I choose to talk to you. I don't have a choice. I can say like I don't want to talk to you, but that urge, this curiosity is within, and I can deny it. It's like sleeping with a woman or being attracted to something or liking some sort of food. You can lie about it, but you can't really choose what food you like. You can tell yourself how much you want, but like sometimes you have a higher calling and you can just let it act through you or you deny it.
Yeah, I actually completely agree.
Is that the top chakra?
I think, yeah, man. This is probably one of the most fun podcasts I've ever done. Actually, like it's because it seems to me like this is a subject you've learned about already quite a bit, but more than anything, you have like this intuition, and so like some of the things you said, like you're connecting dots in such a natural way. I just really love it. So yeah, I think it is the top chakra. That would be our connection to this higher source, and I relate with that 100% because ever since I was a kid, my favorite feeling is inspiration. Like when I feel inspired, it's like nothing. It's like everything's perfect. When you feel that inspiration, whether it's from reading a book or from being with inspiring people, or sometimes it just comes out of nowhere. It is the most life-giving feeling. Everything's clear in a second. Like if I had some question about, because I travel a lot, like where am I meant to travel? Where am I meant to go? And I get some download like, oh, this opportunity that I have right now, like that could be huge. I have to pursue that. It's like there's no, oh, maybe this, maybe on it. Because I've also had plenty of times in my life where even recently where I'm like, I don't know about this. And then I realize when I go to a different energy, like inspiration, I'm like, why was I even wasting any time thinking like that? It's life's too valuable. But again, when you're in the problem, when you're stuck in a problem, in a mental loop, it's hard to see outside of it. That's like the high beta brain waves. When we're stressed, we're often in high beta. So I've had times where, and people can relate to this in their own life situations, but when I was trying to plan out some travel and book a trip, and since travel is something I'm literally traveling like 10 months of the year, largely for fun, also for work, it's like, for me, it's more normal. It's not like, oh, I'm just planning this trip to go to Jamaica for a few weeks. It's like just something I'm doing regularly. And I've had times where I was kind of feeling stressed, booking a flight, doing this, and then I do it. And then a lot of the time, like I would regret it, or it wouldn't even be a great experience, or more often I just would cancel it or change it. It was this whole difficult thing. And I'd look back and think, gosh, if I just got out of my head in that moment and just breathed and just chilled out and waited till the morning when I was more fresh, I would have made a much better decision. I wouldn't have done that, booked that flight or that travel or that whatever, that now I have to spend energy or have my assistant spend energy to undo and lose some money or whatever. But that's just one small example. If we're in survival and stress, we're not thinking clearly. It's probably one of the most difficult things we can do, but to actually get out of that. And that's something, again, like these teachers talking about meditation speak about. So like Dr. Joe Dispenza, he says, when we actually practice meditation, what we're doing, we're actually taking our energy off of all the things we know in our life. Like, for example, like you can, or these cameras, or the microphone, or whatever. It's getting all of our attention off all the stuff we think we know, or some problem or some person, taking it off, and then actually focusing it on nothing. And because it's been found that when we focus our attention on something, like if you get stressed, something's threatening your life, like an animal or whatever, it's a problem, we focus our energy on it, and our brain waves the speed increases, and they're less coherent, less balanced, and our focus just goes totally narrow, so we can't see beyond that problem or that situation, and that's for survival, right? But if we're stuck like that, that's an issue. So in meditation, one of the other benefits, in addition to sort of raising up our energy, and these are different kinds of meditation, like two of my favorite kinds are actually focusing on each of these energy centers or chakras and like cultivating that energy and trying to build it up. But another one is just getting all the focus off of, like taking focus off of everything and putting it on nothing. And this is something that Joe Dispenza teaches. I think he'd be a great guest as well. I'll see if we can make that happen. But anyway, when he does that, when he teaches that, it's like you put your energy on nothing. So imagine like your eyes are closed, and imagine there's just nothing all around you, inside of you, within you, and it's all around you, and it's like in the infinite distance behind you, beyond you, on your sides. What happens, they found, is that your brainwaves actually slow down. People go like almost to sleep, but sitting up so they don't actually fall asleep. I've actually had times where I'm meditating and my head's like bobbing, like as if I was about to fall asleep. And then it's really interesting too, they found that when people get relaxed enough and open enough, their brainwaves, all of a sudden, there's this energy that starts like coming into their body. And their brainwaves actually start speeding up, but they're super organized. So like when we're stressed, it's all out of order. So the different parts of the brain are completely unsynchronized, right? So when people are in this super relaxed state, they're totally open, they're not thinking about their problems or their life, and they're there long enough, it's not something that I think you can necessarily force to happen. You have to like surrender, but this energy comes in and people's brainwaves will pick up into this state they call gamma. It's like the highest brainwave patterns, but it's not like they're super stressed. It's like they're in ecstasy. And these people who they do these brain scans on will actually say it felt like I had light gushing through my body. And there's actually people who, in particular at these meditation retreats with Dr. Joe Dispenza, which I recommend you go to. I think you'd love it. I know you have a kid now, so it makes things a little difficult maybe to go meditate for a week. But anyway, there's actually people who have healed from all sorts of diseases, like just from like in one moment almost. They got some huge gush of energy in their body. I actually think that, speaking about the crown chakra and inspiration from what I've studied, I think that there's this energy that's literally, as Joe Dispenza says, within us and all around us, and it's like God, or people could call it, he calls it the quantum field, but there's this energy that's all around us. We don't see it, but it wants to fill us up. And if we could say like God wants to love us. A lot of religions teach us this, like God wants to give us mercy, wants to give us love, but we block him or block it out. And so if we really relax, we can actually like open up. And for a lot of people, just getting to a relaxed enough state, they don't even have to do anything. It's like some trauma or some issue in their body actually will like be released. But we have to actually make the time. And this is why I personally work on meditating every day. I don't every day. Some days it's longer, other days it's shorter. But just to like get into that super relaxed state to say, okay, even if I have 100 things going on with work and it feels really stressful and I have a bunch of emails, whatever it is, I want to train more and I haven't been because I've been working so much, whatever the thing is that my brain's telling me, all important. If I can like start the day and just try to get to a relaxed state, it's like reducing it's like a new reference point, so that instead of my reference point for relaxation being up here, I can make it even more relaxed so that everything I do, I can go out with like a little bit more calmness in the day. For me, that works. So yeah.
Do you think when you put yourself like in a cold plunge or a grueling workout, I feel like there's like a lot of science behind it where it is so bad. It is so like crazy what you put your body through in those 3 minutes or in these high intensity situations that maybe you access light, or like Huberman would say, you have this dopamine, your body like shoots out dopamine because otherwise your body goes crazy, and it's like running up a hill to not die. Now your body reacts with hormones and shoots it up in the brain.
Yeah.
Because I've always wondered, like, how is it possible that like somebody has more energy than me, right? We were not different. It's almost like I make a choice in my head if I'm willing to go farther than you, right? Even if like there's a lot of times where like we might have the same amount of muscles or the same amount of where we're starting off, or I even have like less muscles or I'm less benefited or less talented or whatever you want to call it, but I can access something that you can't measure, where I make a choice in my head where I'm willing to stay longer in the cold plunge. And that's a good example, because with workout, people get so confused with big muscles and like, but at some point we all started to go to the gym and we all had no muscles, and then there was some sort of choice we made, and then we put ourselves in some sort of situation, and every rep you like force your mind to do a certain thing, and you access some sort of energy, fuel, or some sort of light where that energy comes from, and it comes from like almost nowhere, like it's almost within, or you access something crazy. And it's the same when you go into cold plunge, and sometimes I feel that resistance.
Yeah, right? I think you must be right, actually. The way you put it, it's interesting. I would think it's almost like we think that that you have to work harder when you're working out, or you have to push harder when you're doing an ice bath. You have to somehow push yourself, right? And in a way you do, but from the way you've put your experience, it almost seems to me like it's actually about surrendering. So like you have the strength to do those extra reps, or we've seen there's stories of like a mother lifted a car off of her child when it was stuck. Like, so we actually have the strength. It's almost, again, going back to this idea of like surrendering to this energy and relaxing. It's almost like we need to surrender to our true potential and be okay with that and be open to that. I think that could be a really cool way to put it. And yeah, for sure, we're tapping into some sort of energy field, because again, that mother who lifts the car off the child, like she might not have big muscles, but that energy is within her. Yeah, she might tear things up and have some pain afterwards, or maybe not, but there's so much adrenaline. I think there's definitely a chemical element to it. So I think Huberman's totally right that dopamine is coming out, these hormones, for sure that's coming out there. They're measuring it. But what's interested me more than anything else, and again, the research on this is still pretty young, but knowing what we know, that we do have this energy field, I'm interested in asking the question, like, what's causing those hormones to be released and directed and organized? And it seems to be the case that there is a governing intelligence and energy field that is ordering all of these things. So for example, when you go into an ice bath, let's just try this on. So you're physically stressing your body. We have to tap into an energy. There's like this intelligence that just knows. That's fascinating to me. Like, you go in an ice bath, you don't have to say, yeah, I want to increase the thermostat by 15 degrees. Like, it just does it. So that's the most interesting thing to me, is how we can actually tap in to that innate inbuilt intelligence within us, whether it's through ice baths, through workouts, through training, through meditation. Sunlight's great. Sunlight gives us a lot of energy. That's what interests me the most. So I think you're totally right. We're tapping into a form of energy that is around us.
Yeah, like that woman that picks up the car.
Yeah.
It's like sometimes going to the gym, when I'm there, even sick, I've gone to the gym many times sick, and I can always perform once you put your mind to it. Once you're stressed under that barbell, there is no backing out.
Yeah.
Once you're in that cold plunge,
Yeah.
once you're out of it and like your mind starts rumbling and you tell yourself how sick you are or like how hurt you are, but in like intense situations you work perfectly fine.
Yeah.
I've also been like at gunpoint because I was in Berlin. And also everything is very sharp. I've never felt so present, and like it was almost a beauty in it where you're like, you act like I went to the ground, put my chest on the ground, put my hands up when they told me to. And I thought I was going to be stressed out, but you're not stressed at all.
Wow.
Because you tap into, I need to survive now.
Were these like thieves, if I may ask, or like?
No, I was shooting a music video, and coming from a small town, we always used guns as props. I've never been in a big city.
Yeah.
I didn't think twice about it.
Yeah.
Especially in Europe, we don't have any guns.
Yeah,
In
of
Austria,
course.
nobody has a gun.
Yeah.
So if you have a gun in your hand, it's always a toy gun at all
Yeah.
times in Austria. Nobody
Yeah.
would ever think any different.
Yeah.
So I was in Berlin, I shoot this music video, we have like prop guns. Some neighbor sees it, calls the cops, and we just started the music video like in front of the house, but then the rest is like all in the house. It's like a one shot. We have like GoPros on our head, and the cops run up and hold us at gunpoint.
Wow.
It was intense.
Jeez.
I'll never forget I felt my heart
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
off the cement.
Yeah,
laying
of course. So I would add to this, if that sounds really tough. That's a pretty.
But it's a very
interesting
cool
story.
situation.
Yeah,
like,
I
I
see
don't
what
want to
you're
ever
saying.
do it again, and I don't recommend it. But it was a very interesting situation where you're like, the presence that you feel in that moment.
Yeah.
That's what I feel when I go in the cold plunge
Yeah,
too.
absolutely. Talk about energy. One thing that fascinates me as well, if we're talking about light and energy, is if you think about like there's these Qigong masters, you can look up videos and people might say, oh, I don't believe this, but it's happened enough times. I'm inclined to believe it. So these guys, you could look at like the 1-inch punch, like I think it was Jackie Chan, or Bruce Lee, one of the two. But anyway, these guys are able to. Have you heard of the 1-inch punch? So they're
Like
able
this.
to. Yeah, exactly. They're able to concentrate their chi. It's like how could you do that and literally make a guy fly across the room or really hurt somebody? But and I have a friend of mine. I haven't experienced this personally. A friend of mine who trained with a qigong master who was very talented, and he could actually like put electricity into he could basically punch the guy with no energy, and then he could do it with energy and feel like So these people actually have learned how to train their chi, their energy, and cultivate it right through qigong or meditation or training, all the above. And some guy could actually be skinny or maybe not super ripped, but have this ability. Or these older guys. I met a guy who's a qigong master and I had friends who would actually try to push him over, like two young, really strong guys, and the guy would just stand with his chi, with his energy, and no matter how much energy they put, they could not push him over. He would just stand there strong, and he could just go like this and make them fly. And there's actually videos you can look up on YouTube of like a qigong master with like 20 young students all trying to push him back, and he's just like this grand master just standing there. So of course there's benefits to having muscles and so on, but I also would invite people to, consider what's happening in those cases. How is that possible? Like, so we actually do have this life force energy in us, I believe, this chi or prana, they call it in different places, in different religions and different teachings. But I think that's a pretty fascinating thing for people to understand, that I don't want to tell anybody what they should do or shouldn't do, but just to give people an invitation to be aware that there's more to our life than just what we see with our eyes.
No, and there's some sort of responsibility because there's too much unanswered things. Everybody had this like moment that there's things happening that you cannot explain, you cannot measure. We've all had these moments, maybe more or less. We don't even know why the heart beats, right? We don't know so many things, the universe, I mean, there's when you watch again why having a family is so important. When you see a birth, it is like an alien experience. You cannot. It's unreal. I think every time I'm in an airplane and I look outside, I cannot believe my brain doesn't understand. It doesn't understand it. Of course, I know I'm sitting here, I'm in the air, but it's almost like a picture or like a painting when I look outside. It seems not real.
It's so beautiful.
And when you jump out of an airplane, the intensity of your brain trying to grasp what is happening. That was also one of the best things I've experienced is like jumping out of an airplane, because you're like your brain cannot comprehend what you've just done.
Yeah, I've never done skydiving yet.
Skydiving is intense because you cannot. It's almost like you see, like you hallucinate. I felt like, because you know you're jumping out of an airplane, but you just don't know either. It makes no sense to your brain, so you're just like you're freaking out. It's like
what's going on?
I don't know if it's good for you, but man, it was cool.
Yeah, it's a lot of adrenaline, for sure.
And again, back to the cold plunge. I'm very interested what you think. I love what you say about meditation. I've meditated a lot because my dad is a Buddhist. But I also feel like sometimes you can also like lose yourself a little bit in that, because there's so many ways how to do it. And I think it's a very, very hard entry. I feel like sometimes exercising or cold plunging is a very easy entry.
Yeah.
Because for meditating, it sounds like so easy, but I think for a normal person, it is very hard to access.
Yeah.
This kind of stillness and this kind of like going within and accessing this power. I think you can meditate for years and not access that, but you cannot go in a cold plunge 10 times and not feel a certain way, I feel like,
Yeah, 100%. It's definitely...
Not to take away from the meditating, just to give people maybe an easier way. I feel like everybody's so lost at this point. People are so lost with what they want to do, how they feel, why they feel bad. Everybody feels bad. Everybody's such a victim. So I think like an easy entry is like sun and water, fire.
I agree
Earth.
completely. And that was my experience. Like, I didn't go right into meditation.
Yeah.
I was learning about diets, which was even an easier entry because there's so much information.
Yeah.
At sometimes it is hard because you don't know which diet to do or what to do. But anyhow, that led to light and earthing we didn't even speak about, but the benefit of going barefoot on the earth, they've actually studied that, and it reduces inflammation. But so getting out in the sun, going barefoot, taking ice baths, I completely agree. Because when we do that, I believe, and again, in my own experience, that we raise our energy in some way, and I couldn't exactly say how, but we're literally just increasing the energy in our system, improving our mitochondrial function, improving how our brains work. And from my experience, and I believe others would have this experience, I have many customers who purchase our products who have had similar experiences. They start with the diets, then, or even before that with Western medicine, then diets, then they get into sunlight, ice baths, grounding, training, and so on. And then their brains are working better, they're thinking more clearly, and then they're saying, yeah, well, there's got to be more. I want to do meditation now, or I want to practice some other sort of additional disciplines as well.
I wonder if you could tap into making some sort of bulb that starts blue and then turns yellow.
Oh yeah, we're getting
then
there.
Turns red.
For sure.
So you have only red light at night, like how your iPhone was.
Yeah.
So you don't always have to wear glasses.
Yeah, of course. That's where we're headed.
Because like everything's messed up, I guess. Like everything is so artificial. It would be cool if right, if bulbs change, because it's so easy to do, I guess.
You have the whole plan. You got it all figured out. we're actually going that direction. So we're working on bulbs and things like this. It's all in the process. Absolutely. We wouldn't use red exactly. There's actually better ways to do it. So, but anyway, we're working on it.
Do you think people slept better when we had like candles?
Oh yeah, I think for sure. I mean, now
I don't think there's like insomnia back then, right?
I would imagine not, especially if you're like working on a farm all day. You know, you're just going to be tired and you're going to sleep. Screens, for sure, lack of sunlight disrupt our circadian rhythm. They make it hard for us to sleep. So it makes perfect sense. And more people are having issues with sleep. More and more people are taking sleeping pills. And our glasses are like a natural alternative to sleeping pills. They're like a natural alternative to alcohol, because people are taking alcohol or drinking alcohol just to relax at the end of the day. But they're stimulating themselves with artificial light at the same time. So it's like It's like people who, take one drug that puts you up and one drug that brings you down. I don't know what the exact example would be. It's not my expertise, but that's what artificial light is. It's a drug that brings you up and then alcohol brings you down. And so that's what people are doing versus just, for example, using the glasses or just using candles at night in the house. You're just going to relax the way we're designed to. So we relax naturally and sleep better. And people wake up less in the night. They wake up with more energy when they wake up in the morning.
Can you tell me about normal sunglasses?
Yeah, bro, of course. So from what I've studied, normal sunglasses are generally not a great idea because they're all different in how they work, but first of all, they all block ultraviolet light, and there's evidence that ultraviolet light actually causes the pupil to contract, so more than the other colors and wavelengths. So for example, when you're out in the sun, if there's ultraviolet, the pupil will get smaller and say, okay, it's really bright, I should not let in so much light. Well, sunglasses block the ultraviolet so the eye doesn't get the same stimulus, and then the pupil stays a little bit more open, dilated, but there's tons of high energy blue light a lot of the time that these sunglasses are letting through. So sunglasses in this way can actually cause a lot of damage to the eyes, and this would be a big problem. Also,
doesn't your body just think it's in the shade also?
I've
heard like your body is like because it's like when I go outside, it's very bright. It's almost like I look for shade or like
Yeah. So for example, yes, you could say that because it's reducing the intensity. So another issue with sunglasses is that people could cause themselves to sunburn because they're thinking, oh yeah, like I'm in the shade, it's easy, I'm not getting this overstimulation from the sun through my eyes. But then all of a sudden they sunburn because they're in the sun too long, so their body should get that signal. Like for example, if their sunglasses were off, their brain would be saying, oh, this is too bright, I need to go get in the shade, I need to put a shirt on. But then they don't get that message in their eyes, and so they could actually sunburn. There's also evidence that the UVB, ultraviolet B light that comes in, which is what makes vitamin D on our skin, that it comes in and it causes the eye to make more melanin in our skin to protect us when we're getting a lot of sun. So to tan, actually, to start the process for tanning. And then so when we're wearing sunglasses, that also means that our body, our brain, isn't going to get the right signal.
So no natural protection.
Yeah, exactly. So we reduce our natural protection, and then we could actually potentially increase our risk of skin cancer in the skin because of wearing sunglasses. So in general, from this information, I would not wear sunglasses unless I'm, for example, driving. Because when you're driving, you're behind a window. Windows actually change the spectrum of sunlight in a negative way. They take out the healing near infrared to a great extent. They often reduce the ultraviolet. They distort the spectrum, so it's no longer like sunlight. In other words, it hasn't even been studied enough how the light through window affects us, so I would be careful. It's not something we can recommend for people. It's not something that existed 500 years ago, really, windows and lots of light through windows. So anyhow, maybe there were windows, but it wasn't where we lived inside constantly, right? So if somebody's in a car, I will wear sunglasses because the light's already getting distorted by the windows, unless I roll the windows down. And if I'm driving slowly, I'll do that. But if I'm on the freeway and it's too loud, I'll just close it and then I'll use my glasses because our glasses actually work as sunglasses. If somebody did want to have like an optimal sunglass, they could actually use our daylight lenses or even better, our sunset lenses, because they block out in a more even way. They block out the ultraviolet and the high energy blue light. So the only wavelengths coming through the lenses are these longer wavelengths, red, orange, yellow. And so these are actually more healing for the eyes. So people can use our lenses, and we have this in our little product brochure. People can use the lenses during the day for like therapeutic benefits. But if you're wearing glasses, our glasses, or any sunglasses whenever you're outside, then you're also not getting the full benefits of the sun. So that's another thing I would recommend people consider. So if you want to wear sunglasses for style here and there, it's fine, as long as you're getting the morning sunlight without the sunglasses and still getting a good amount of sun throughout the day without the sunglasses to set the hormones and get everything running properly.
Are you into suffering?
Suffering in what sense?
I'm like big into... I feel like in the world you have like yin and yang. You have the sun, and it's as important as the night when you sleep, right? Complete darkness. I don't know, I can't stop thinking about like accessing the light.
Yeah.
Right? Because like I feel like I'm like almost on like a search like for the literal pain, because it gives me light.
It's super interesting.
Not like a relationship pain or throwing myself in front of a car. More like when I put myself in the cold plunge or in an intense workout, I feel light because it's so dark.
Yeah.
Almost.
I actually think you're completely onto something. Like a lot of the people who have found the most meaning in their lives have gone through really difficult challenges, whether physically, mentally, or both. So I think you're onto something. And I'm actually, as I mentioned earlier, I've been in previous years doing tons of more computer work for my business. I travel a lot and I get out, but I've had much more of a strong calling recently just to get out and do a lot more training. I'm 24 years old, so like I'm still pretty early on figuring all this out, and I've found like, oh my gosh, I want to do more like you're describing. Like, I mean, I've done cold plunges for years, but when you say, I wouldn't say suffering, because suffering I think is like psychological, like really psychological. Maybe like pain, you know, because I think you can. There's like. This is kind of what Buddha said, you know, suffering is when we have like desire, like selfish desire, and we don't get what we want or something, right? But like I think physical pain.
I like chosen pain.
Yeah.
Because also physical, you can say like somebody shoots you and then.
Well, no, not, yeah. Right. But like pain, I know what you mean. Like, let's say you go to the gym and you work really hard. Like for me, in fact, like after talking with you, I'm like, I want to go to the gym and like rip myself out or go for a really hard hike. Cause like, I love that feeling of like, like, just feeling so relaxed in my whole body after a really good any kind, even yoga, you know, will have that effect sometimes.
Absolutely.
I love
your heart beats to your neck.
Yeah.
There's like something about walking or sprinting, right? Because when you sprint, you feel the light.
Yeah.
Because it gets so dark.
Yeah.
And I feel that especially in the cold plunge, it's changed my life forever. Because I feel the light as soon as I go in. I feel the inner resistance before. I hesitate. Even just clicking on that little timer, I hesitate. Any second I can get. My body's like, oh yeah, feels so good. Stay in the warm, right?
Yeah.
But I know like, I'm just like, don't be a bitch. That's why I record myself every morning too, because it keeps me accountable. It's nice to be accountable.
Of course, that's great.
You know?
It's a great idea.
And I feel like we don't have any pain anymore. We're overexposed. Not only we're underexposed in the sun. Obviously, nobody goes in the sun, but we're overexposed with never being hunted or in fear, in real fear. It's always the mind fear. Yeah. Our mind is driving us crazy, but we have all the food. I have all the protection. I have no natural disaster here in LA is going to hurt me. Yeah. I am so safe. I feel like in this bubble. Yeah. Nothing can hurt me, right? I wake up every morning. I have Wi-Fi. I have a fridge full of fucking food. I have wife and kids and a car that drives me wherever I want, enough money to buy the newest iPhone. There is nothing gives me purpose. Yeah. You know, that's why all these veterans have all these problems, because they had purpose and then they don't have purpose anymore. Now what? Yeah. You know, they had a cause and then they lost that cause. And I think back in the day, you cannot only eat how they ate and sleep how they sleep and expose yourself to sun. They had purpose. They had to like feed a village. Yeah. There is no time or a place. There's no place for depression and being anxious and hesitation.
I couldn't agree more, bro.
So you need pain. You can call it whatever you want, but you need pain. I cannot like tell that people enough. They are so comfortable in their being. And that's where I hesitate with meditation, because I feel like pain truly teaches me who I am and what I'm supposed to do. Yeah. You know?
It could actually be for some people. Pain, but it could be a form, like going to the gym and working out could be a form of meditation. Really, when I mention meditation, what I'm saying is actually, it's like, so for example, most people, if they sit down and they close their eyes and they sit with themselves, they literally can't handle it for 5 minutes. And think about how fast 5 minutes goes by when your eyes are open. But people can't sit with themselves for 5 minutes. What that means, especially because we've talked about it, we have this sort of inner light. I believe that this energy that we carry with us, it's who we really are. It's our consciousness. And so if someone can't close their eyes and sometimes I have a hard time with this, to be honest, too. And then I know I'm in a tough spot, and I know why. It's because I haven't been looking at what's going on. But so anyway, you sit with yourself, you close your eyes for 5 minutes. If you can't handle that there's some sort of, let's call it discomfort or something happening inside, right? Well, as soon as you open your eyes, it didn't go away. It's still there. It just means now every single thing someone does in their life, that baseline inside of them is that state of, you could call it dis-ease, or like not being at ease, not being relaxed. There's some sort of something that's in there that they haven't dealt with. And so the only reason I'm interested, one of the main reasons I should say I'm interested in meditation, is just very practical. Not like I want to be a monk or something like this, but just like, if I'm going to go into my day, if I can't sit with myself in quiet for 10 to 20 minutes, for example, maybe sometimes more, I like going longer, because if I start feeling really good and I'm starting getting some kind of like feeling good or some downloads or information or clarity about some questions I have about business or something like that, then I want to enjoy it, right? And go further. But if someone can't sit with themselves for 5 or 10 minutes, then it tells a lot about how that, you could predict a lot about how that person's life is. Like if somebody can't sit with themselves for 5 or 10 minutes, they probably have their life is probably really difficult for them, because they can't even handle themselves. They can't even be comfortable with themselves. So every situation they go out into, they're going to bring that discomfort with them. So in a way, I would say that meditation kind of achieves what you're talking about in a mental sense, because people have to go up against their own beliefs, emotions, traumas. They actually have to deal with that before. So it's like the equivalent. And Paul Chek, are you familiar with Paul Chek, the trainer? So he says this a lot, like there's working out and then working in, and it's really important to do both. So you can work out hard, but there could be people who go to the gym and they're avoiding some discomfort inside of them, and that's how they avoid it. For me, it wasn't using the gym to avoid it. It was working on my business, was like a way of avoiding some sort of discomfort that I actually had to start looking at, and that's how I got into meditation. So just another way to look at it.
Avoiding is huge.
Yeah.
Netflix.
We're all doing it.
TikTok.
Yeah.
It's all about doing what you're not supposed to do. And this like our lives has been set up for this like ultimate distraction. The ultimate distraction. You can distract your whole life with nonsense. And I guess meditation really forces you, because you have nothing.
I would say like some of the most valuable practices for people that what I've gathered, right? Getting sunlight. Like if I structured my ideal day, and this is what I do most days, not every day, but getting up, doing some kind of meditation even before the sun comes up, early, or early in the morning, getting the morning sunlight, some kind of work. I like to work early when my brain is the sharpest, like, because effectively our brain function is the highest from 6 to 8 in the morning.
That's why you wanted the podcast at 8.
Yeah, ideally, yeah, earlier, exactly. But variety of reasons. But anyhow, so I like to work then because I'm going to have the best clarity. People can easily see if you actually look at your life. Like for me, at least, a friend of mine said, he's a yogi and he's an Ayurvedic medicine doctor, so traditional Indian medicine. When I started speaking with him, he said, hey, just look at your day and look when you get stressed. I bet you'll see it's more in the afternoon because your nervous system is tired. Your brain's tired from exertion. And then in the evening, you might even notice if you have challenging thoughts, they're usually in the evening. And I started looking, I'm like, oh my gosh, he was right. I never realized it. But when I wake up in the morning, I always feel fresh, motivated, enthusiastic. I've stopped drinking alcohol almost completely over the last couple of years. So unless you have a hangover, then you might wake up feeling like crap. But in general, you wake up, things are pretty good. It's for me only in the late afternoon that I'm tired and I start questioning things maybe more than I should. I need to just go for a walk, but I'm maybe worrying about something sometimes. And then in the evening, like before bed, that's sometimes if I haven't, for example, worked out hard enough that day where I'm like tired or done enough surfing, or I like to run and surf particularly, or if I was on my phone those last 2 hours right before going to bed, there's all these thoughts going through my head, then that's when we're more inclined to be worried and stressed. So anyway, that's why I would do some morning work. But then of course, training, surfing for me, running, but some kind of physical activity. I'm actually really stoked to do a lot more like gym workout. You've inspired me. You and my friend Solbra. I don't know if you know Solbra. He's a guy on Instagram. I got to introduce you guys. You would make a great podcast together. But anyway, so these kinds of things, going barefoot on the earth, taking care of light, training, again, hitting the gym, meditating. I think these are some of the most useful practices that people could do that are genuinely productive. Like if you're doing these things, generally you're not avoiding something. You're actually either you're being productive with work and so on. I want to say that you made, I think, such a great point about how our society is set up to avoid stuff. Like we're avoiding stuff as a culture. I mean, I've done it so much. I think people like us and I think everybody actually has this feeling deep down that there's something greater for them, like that they have some potential, that they actually do have a way to change the world. I think for us, a big thing is, we've worked on ourselves and we've learned information and we've created something. Like I have a company and you have a company and a brand and education and, obviously content, you do a lot of comedy, but like you've built something, right? You've built yourself, you've done this work. You can actually help inspire other people who maybe work a 9 to 5. Like sometimes I forget how lucky I am and for what I've built in my own efforts. Like I have so much freedom compared to somebody who has a 9 to 5 or has to drive Uber to make some money to feed themselves. But we actually have this opportunity, like when I was speaking with my Uber driver earlier, to inspire people to let out some more of their greatness and have the freedom. Because ultimately everybody has this potential. And so again, I resonate with that so much. When I was in Europe last spring, so just a couple of months ago actually, and I was reading a book. And one of the characters in the book, it was a war story, really fascinating war story. But anyway, one of the main characters, when he was younger, he had gone to Crete. The war story was on Crete. He was basically, long story short, so people have context, the book's called Natural Born Heroes, I believe. And it's about when the Nazis took over Crete. There were these shepherds and people who resisted, and these British guys came and they actually kidnapped one of the generals of Hitler, got him on a submarine. Anyway, so when this guy was a kid, he was living in England, got kicked out of school, like the main character who organized this kidnapping, got kicked out of school, and then worked in London for a couple years. And he basically said to himself something like, I don't feel like I fit in. I feel like I better go overseas or abroad and kind of figure my life out, leave England for a while. And he had this idea, I'm just going to walk to Istanbul, or then they call it Constantinople. So he actually literally walked. He took a boat to Rotterdam, and he walked up the Rhine River and down the Donau, the Danube River, all the way into Romania, and then he cut off to Bulgaria and walked. And I read that, I was like, that sounds so cool. Like, talk about a purpose, even though it's something maybe simple, like a pilgrimage, you could say, like just a purpose of walking. And so I thought, well, I want to do something like that. So I learned about this Camino de Santiago. Maybe you've heard of it in Europe. There's this path in Spain. Actually, there's many paths, but they all lead to this city, Santiago, which is, the legend is that it's where St. James in English, or Sant Jakob in German, Santiago or Santiago is Old Spanish. That's why the city has that name. People walk to this guy's tomb, like where he's finally buried. He's one of Jesus's 12 apostles, and so he's in Spain. So many people for 1,000 years have been walking on this path. But you start in France, just across the Pyrenees, and you walk for a month. And I actually did this. I walked like around 520 or so miles. It's about 800 kilometers over, like every day I walked around 20 kilometers, 25 kilometers. And it was like 5 or 6 hours of walking every day. I was also running my business, but I felt so much purpose. Like I wasn't stressing about anything. I woke up and I was like, I'm going to work a little bit and then I'm going to go walk. And I have like this clear purpose. Like I need to cover this much ground today. And then I'd get in and I'm like, I can't just get lazy now because I still have to run my business. So now I'm going to work for like 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 hours. And then I go to sleep and wake up and I'm like, wake up, I'm walking. And it was 30 days, and it was honestly one of the best times I've ever had in my life. I want to do it again. I want to do more. I want to do like a longer distance. But anyway, the point is I couldn't agree more. Like to have some purpose or like subject yourself to something. I mean, walking's not that hard. I had like, my bag was 17, 18 kilograms, so like 35 pounds. So it was pretty heavy for my size, like carrying that all the time. But I didn't question it. I wasn't like, oh, why am I doing this? I was like, I had this intention. I want to do this. This is so exciting. I felt so alive. I was like, this is awesome. You know, like people, like I've read some books from Julius Caesar when he was the general. Mm-hmm. after he was the consul of Rome, before being the dictator, he got to be a general, and they gave him just once you're a consul, like a leader in ancient Rome, they would give you a governorship. So they'd say, okay, you're a consul, now you're done, like the president, now you're done. We're going to make you a governor over here. So they kind of keep them under control in this way. Like, okay, we're going to send you over to Spain. But they kind of made a mistake. They made him the governor of the northern Italian provinces. So like now where Switzerland is, like near Austria also, he was the governor of this region. And he had this legion, of course, like an army with him, protecting the borders of Rome from the Germanic tribes, people like you, your ancestors. Anyway, and the French people, like the Gallic people, they kept kind of coming close to the border. So, and Caesar wrote this. I recommend anybody, if they're interested, read Caesar's like literal journals. It's called De Bello Gallico, or About the Gallic Wars in Latin, or On the Gallic Wars or something. But anyway, he describes the whole thing, how the French, the Gallic tribes were coming close to the border, and he was using it as an excuse. He just started attacking them. He just wanted to expand the empire. But the policy was like, oh, Rome, we're such good people, we're not going to attack anyone. But it's just like a lie, just like the United States has these lies today. Like, you get the idea. Anyway, so he used this as an excuse to start conquering France. He was like, oh yeah, they're coming too close to us. So he started going over and then took all of France and made it part of the Roman Empire, now modern day France. And then he even sailed across the English Channel and conquered most of England up to Scotland. And anyway, the thing that fascinates me is like these guys, he was doing this for 8 years, conquering all these different areas, and they were walking like thousands of kilometers, like constantly out in nature, walking, surviving. Like in the winter, they'd build up their camp and survive wherever they were for the winter, and Caesar would go back to Italy and be in the northern part and kind of resting, and then in the spring they would start again their conquering and fighting. And I completely agree with you. There's that purpose that we're missing. And for me, the best answer I could give is what I said earlier for us today. Like, for the average person, for anybody who's listening to this, probably not the average person, but somebody who's interested in how they can improve themselves, like, I would just tell people, like, come up with an idea and just try to execute it. Like, I had this idea of a business. I was 16 when I started thinking about having a business, and then I was 18 when it came together. And I've been working on it since then, about 6 years, and it's just the beginning. Like, I realized even if you make something successful, like what you've done or what I've done with the company, you can't stop, I'm now thinking like, okay, well, I've done this. I don't feel like fulfilled in the way that I want to just stop. I feel fulfilled, but I want to do more. And it's like, well, now, yeah, we want to make light bulbs. We want to make light therapy devices. There's so much more we could do. So I think there's something to be said about when you start, let's say, doing this, you use the term like pain or suffering, like you start doing self-inflicted pain, but in a way that's disciplined, like to grow yourself. You might get really good at to a certain level, but you can't just stop there. It's almost like it's an ever-evolving process. Like we want to keep growing and see. And again, Joe, I would bring up this guy, Dr. Joe Dispenza again, because he says it's like our soul, from a scientific but spiritual perspective as well, like our soul wants to understand what its highest potential is in this lifetime. Like the soul wants to do that. That's like what it's here for. So we have to keep pushing. We can't just say, I'm done.
Especially as a man, you need purpose. I think a lot of women find purpose in having a family and being pregnant. Watching my wife become a mother is very purposeful. And it's so sad that nowadays society makes you think that like being a stay-at-home mom is something with no purpose, and that you like need to pursue money and career and a job to have purpose as a woman, which is really sad because there is no more purpose than creating life.
Yeah.
I cannot comprehend what that feels like. I don't know what that must be like to have a fetus in your body. I don't know what it's like to walk around with that 9 months and then birth that and then see that grow. I mean, that's something that we will never experience.
Yeah.
So as a man, or just in general, I think many men have lost purpose, and we need purpose. And that's why we come up with depression and anxiety and all these crazy problems and new cancers and COVID, and because we have no purpose. And when you were on that walk, you have purpose. And I remember when I was a kid and I went to be a Boy Scout, and all we had to do is find wood, make a fire, make food, make up the tent, sleep in the tent every day.
Yeah.
You have purpose. You don't question shit. You just
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah.
You know?
Absolutely. I could literally
Not
could not
everybody.
agree more.
Yeah, not everybody is a leader. There's a not everybody that watches this is gonna become a company owner and a CEO, and they don't need to. When I was working at the Red Cross, I worked at the Red Cross for 9 months. I had so much purpose. It's a 9 to 5, but so much purpose. You show up, you go in the ambulance. I was like, I don't know what you call it in English, but like in the back of the car, and you go
Yeah.
to whatever happens.
Yeah, EMT probably.
EMT.
Yeah.
I was an EMT, and I just help people.
Yeah.
There's nothing
amazing.
creative about it. There's nothing. You don't make a lot of money. We didn't make any money because we have to do it as when you're a male in Austria. You have to
Okay.
either go in military or you do some sort of social work.
Yeah.
So I didn't make any money, but it was the most purposeful. Every day, I knew I'm gonna help somebody,
Yeah.
and it gave me so much purpose. You don't question anything, and you feel so good. You feel so good.
Yeah. Would you say you've gotten a lot of purpose from having a kid?
Of course.
Yeah,
So your
I would
purpose
imagine.
changes. That's what I want to get to.
Yeah.
It's not that I want to be EMT my whole life. Some people maybe do. But I felt like I was always very creative, and I always wanted a lot more. I always felt like a leader. And I always wanted to get everything. Like I was 10 years, I was the only child. So I always had this like crazy crave of really expressing myself, and that might lead back to me trying to get the love of my parents after toddler arrives. So I feel like when I started TikTok, I had a big purpose, and I achieved that purpose, and I got 10 million followers. Me and my wife have like 30 million followers, and you lose that purpose because you get to some point, or even going to the gym, you get the abs, you get the muscles, and you need to redirect purpose and refine purpose constantly as a man, kind of.
Yeah.
And then I found the podcast, and I found this higher calling of like, this is my purpose. I have to do this. I have to talk to people. And it seems effortless. I could do this all day. I could talk to you all day.
Hey,
This
it's
could never
great.
end, right?
Yeah.
When you don't see the purpose, when you have no purpose in your life, everything is a chore. Everything hurts. When I edit, and sometimes I like, should I clip this? This is gonna be worth it. I'm like, oh my God, like it feels like pain, not the good one, the bad
Yeah.
pain. Or when I do some nonsense where like, you have to clean something, or like you have to bring out the garbage. I'm like, I go to the gym and I pay for a gym membership to lift weight up, which makes no sense. It
Yeah.
doesn't do anything. It doesn't do any good.
Yeah.
Might even hurt my joints. It might be bad for me, but I don't question it. I have purpose. I have a straight goal. I have a workout written down. Go to the gym and have no workout. Just go random. You have no purpose. You don't know what you're doing, and everything. You have no way to go.
Yeah.
That's why we need the timer. We need our regiments. That's why people sell courses, and like, you need purpose in your life, and you need to do things with purpose. Otherwise, it just seems pointless, and you want to kill yourself.
Yeah. I agree.
Right?
I agree.
And I think a lot of purpose is gone because we don't survive anymore. We live in this big fat life where we have everything. People like complain and like say, "Oh my God, like the world is coming to an end, the Great Reset, everybody's
Yeah.
evil." But where darkness is, there is light.
Yep, that's
You
for
know?
sure. That's for sure. I think if we look at what our ancestors would have done, this is what I think about this kind of thing a lot. Like, okay, if you took my ancestors, let's just say my ancestors are from all over Europe, Ireland, England, France, Germany, and Italy. So I'm kind of mixed, right? So say Ireland, and they're just like farming potatoes. I don't know, right? 500 years ago, they were just on the land farming potatoes. And you could tell them that they could live in this amazing futuristic society where they could have complete freedom to do pretty much whatever they want, travel wherever they want, and so on. I ask myself, like, don't I think that ancestor, given the opportunity of this life, would be like so stoked and so grateful? Not only do they not have to worry about surviving and just growing potatoes or something and surviving through a cold winter, now they actually have the ability to create anything. Like, so if we shift that perspective and imagine I do this regularly. Like, how would my ancestors feel that all of their hard work has come to me? Like, and then what would they do in this position? And I would think they would absolutely make the most of it. They would travel like what I'm kind of doing now. I mean, they would travel all over the world, maybe worry less about stuff. I worry, right? I spend, I should say, more energy than I'd like sometimes overthinking things. That's the best way to put it. More than is necessary. But anyhow, that's just a practice to improve, right? But, they would travel, and that's what I'm doing. Like, go out and get excited. Like, there's something cool to do. Or eventually at some point, once I'm, ready to settle down more, have a family, maybe travel less and focus on a family, but still through the internet, through, maybe local travel in the United States, build relationships, build a company, like go out and get after it. I think that's a purpose in and of itself, right? So, there's a part of me that still wants to do this walking thing and go walk for a long, like I've thought about walking the whole distance of Europe, just like the full from Paris to Jerusalem or something. Just because like talk about on the surface, like you said about the gym, yeah, maybe it looks like, oh, what's the point of that? But it's like it gives me something, something that is inward, right? And this is something that's fascinated me about this concept of like inner light. I actually. You mentioned you had a friend who wrote, or somebody on the podcast was writing songs, and they said like it flowed through them. I love writing, and I also love music and singing. I haven't written my own music yet. I just like to play guitar and sing different songs, but it's something I thought I would like to do more songwriting. I think I'm being like, how do I say? I'm being shy. I'm being like, oh no, I'm not going to be good at writing music. That's a lie. I could be great at writing music. So I wrote a poem recently because a friend of mine inspired me. He was reading a poem he wrote. I was like, if he could do that, I could do that for sure. Anyway, and I finished this poem. I had started writing a little bit while I was walking on this pilgrimage path in Spain for that month. And then I had only written like 4 lines. And then I finished the rest while I was on this car drive. And it literally felt like sometimes it felt so beautiful and so nice. I literally wanted to cry. I felt like oh, this is great. And it was touching something that I had in me, this like great feeling, this like sweetness of like, oh, this is so beautiful. And one of the things I wrote was like, all the rivers I crossed, all the valleys I traveled, they were all inside of me. I mean, it wasn't exactly written like that, but like all of that is just somehow an inner process that we're going through. So it's like the hardest gym workout you ever do, the hardest ice bath you ever do, the hardest business challenge I ever, conquer or deal that we make or opportunity or product we create. Like it's somehow, again, it's like this, it's inside of me, I believe, inside of us. And it's just like, conquering that inside of us and growing within us. And if you look at the science, actually, there's a lot of science behind this. Like, where is this reality we're experiencing? Where is it actually happening, right? Like, as far as we know, based on science, it's all happening in my head, right? And same for you. Like, yeah, we see all this stuff, but it's, again, according to basic neuroscience, the light information's coming in and we're creating an image in our brain that isn't actually what's outside of us. It's just sort of a reflection of what's outside of us, right? And so in the same way, like, and this information, the only reason I know this is a camera is because I have some history that tells me this is a camera. If you took, I don't know, someone from hundreds of years ago, Ben Franklin. I was trying to think of somebody from Austria. But, you showed them a camera, they would have no meaning for them at all. They'd maybe try to connect it with something. The point is everything we see and experience, it has meaning. Like, oh, there's a plant. Oh, that looks like a tub. Oh, that's probably Ken's ice bath because Ken's pretty fit guy. He probably takes ice baths and he has this tub out there. You know what I mean? Like, so we have these networks and we can make guesses and assumptions of like what something is. And it's rare that we see something that we don't know what it is because our brain is literally for survival supposed to map everything. Like if we saw a massive cloud of black smoke, we'd try to figure out really quickly, like that's not normally there. What's that? So all that's to say, what I've come to understand and believe about life and this whole idea of inner light is that our whole experience of the world actually really is happening inside of us anyway. So when we sit and meditate, we're actually kind of doing in some respects, some of the hardest work on ourselves. Like we're really going in and we actually have to deal with our own crap, if you will, all that stuff. But so also like when we go out in the world, so to speak, and we're experiencing whether it's, going to the gym and training or like doing an ice bath or me walking, 500 or 8 miles or 800 kilometers or something, like it's like somehow allowing us to go deeper inside ourselves and face things like within us that we didn't know we could or didn't think we could, but we proved to ourselves that we can, and then we kind of go on for the next adventure. I think that's like the beauty of life, actually, and I'm even more excited about it now talking with you about it. So,
And people also get wrong. I think working out, I work out for my mental health. The body is a nice side effect, but it trains your mind. You train, you sharpen your mind. You get stronger in here.
of course.
Right?
Yeah.
Same with the cold plunge. It teaches me the pain I create here. When I wake up, I always have a fever sometimes. I feel like hot from my thoughts. Like when I go in the cold plunge, and especially when I put my head down, I understand the pain was just created in my head.
Yeah.
And Buddha says being enlightened is the end of suffering. That's why it's really nice that you corrected me on that, because I don't actually want to suffer. I just understand.
I didn't think so.
No. I just understand that pain is beautiful. We need pain, otherwise you throw yourself like a GTA character out of a car. You need to feel the pain of fire, and when you hurt yourself, it teaches you.
Yeah.
Pain is a beautiful teacher. What we're experiencing is suffering, because 99% of our suffering we create in our mind. And when you put yourself in a painful situation like the cold plunge, it like levels you out. You are like, I come out, I'm like, oh wow, I'm just grateful to be alive.
Yeah.
I don't care about no emails, and I just survived a near-death experience almost,
Yeah. Actually, in your brain.
In my brain, I did, because I thought I couldn't breathe. When I dive in every morning, I'm like,
Yeah.
I can't breathe, and I have to like calm myself down. I'm like, no, this is what we do. This is what I do every morning.
Yeah.
Every morning I'm,
I love that.
And I'm like, I come out, I'm like, I'm never gonna warm up again. I'm never gonna warm up. I'm dying. And then I'm like, no, this is what we do.
How long do you stay in usually?
3 minutes.
That's great. And what
37.
temperature? Oh, that's great. I love that.
I like
a
a
buddy of mine has
32,
that.
33 though.
Oh yeah, great. Yeah, the greatest spiritual teachers, they do say, from what I've read and studied, they say like pain is such a great teacher. So
pain is.
I think it's a.
That guru also says that.
Yeah.
Pain is the best.
Yeah.
He says when I call you a bitch in German, you don't understand. But when I call you like a bitch in English, you take that and you hurt yourself. Same with like an iPhone, where you think this is you. So when your car gets in a crash, you're like, it hurts you, even though it's not you. Mm-hmm. But even we teach that to children, that they're like, they think certain objects are them, and like they feel pain. It's crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They feel pain when that thing. When I take a hammer right now and I smash your iPhone, you feel pain, and you self-inflict that. You create that in your head.
Yeah, absolutely, and we don't have to do that.
You don't have to do that.
Yeah. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and being enlightened is the end of that. It's the end of suffering.
Great.
Man.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here, for the work you do. I hope everybody goes and checks out your glasses.
Yeah, Raw Optics, like
Raw
the sun
Optics.
god Ra, R-A.
Amazing. And I think it's a great benefit, and I can't wait to see how much better I sleep and what it's gonna do.
I'm excited.
I'm excited.
I'm excited to hear from you
Yeah,
too.
because I test myself on a very intense level, as much as I can, and I'm all about self-improvement, so this is gonna be a great device to check out. And thank you so much.
Cool. My pleasure, brother. And I'm not nervous at all, because we had again the top athletes who are so dialed in. Like after Holland, the number one women's soccer player in the world. She plays for Bayern Munich now, women's, and she's from Denmark anyway. And she reached out after we sent her the glass. She's like, my heart rate variability went up by like 25%. Is that normal? And we're like, yeah, we've seen it. It happens. It's the effect of sleeping better and being in more balance, right? So I'm thinking the same will go with you, being dialed in and high level.
And
Thank you so much for having me.
What else are you gonna do?
Yeah,
I'm very excited.
Thank you for having me on the podcast, brother. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. I look forward to the next one.
All right.
All right, take care, brother.